They all need to come forward, Robert. You can lead them all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Robert, I want you to come to the microphone after I hear from all the other boys, but I'd like all the other boys to introduce themselves at the microphone and then have a seat. Then we'll hear from Robert. He has worked on an Eagle project for us. Keep going, keep going.
What do you want me to say?
Give us your name.
My name's Andrew Sauer. I'm the Assistant Senior Patrol Leader for Troop 356, and I'm a Star Scout.
Welcome. Step up.
I'm Cole Newberry. I'm a patrol leader for Troop 356, and I'm also a Star Scout.
Great.
I'm Cooper Vance. I'm the troop bugler, and I'm first class.
Well, bring your bugle next time.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Valeria Stetner, and I'm a troop patrol guide, and I'm a Star Scout.
My name's James Everidge, and I'm a Tenderfoot.
My name is Matthew Ford. I am troop historian, and I am first class.
My name is Braden Lewis, and I am a Tenderfoot.
My name is Bryce Latteroot. I'm a Den Chief, and I'm also first class.
My name is Max Karetny. I'm a patrol leader, and I'm Star Scout.
My name is Nathan Holden. I am acting senior patrol leader, and I'm a Star Scout.
I'm Ron Fader. I'm the Scoutmaster for Troop 356, and appreciate you having us here.
Yes, sir.
My name is Coleman Fox, and I am the Troop Scribe for Troop 356, and I am a Star Scout.
I'm Matt Hashemi, and I'm a Life Scout.
Well, it was good to have one Life Scout with all those Star Scouts. I'm glad we're moving on up.
So I'm Robert Osborne, and I recently achieved my rank of Eagle. And I just
congratulations. Let's have a hand for Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd just like to describe to you my project a little bit. My project consisted of 4 parts. One was clearing a gravesite at Corinth Baptist Church. It was an overgrown gravesite, and it had
Where is Corinth Baptist Church?
It's on the corner of North Coleman and Pine Grove.
Okay.
So just off of Canton Street, a little west of it. So I cleared that gravesite. There's 3 historical gravestones there, and the Historical Society would like to try to discover more about the gravesite because there's not much known about it. So that's one thing that I did. Another thing that I did was there are many, there's black historical markers in downtown Roswell, and they're at historical locations, and they give little information about the history of Roswell, basically. Many of them were worn from the sun, from the weather, and they were rusting. So I replaced 10 signs and provided funds to replace more in the future. Also replaced all of the bolts with stainless steel bolts so they will no longer rust. And also they all have a laminated coat on them, so also they won't be deteriorated by the sun again. Also, the other thing that I did was I created these brochures, which I'd like to pass out to you guys.
Thank you. If you'll hand that to Kay, she'll pass them out. Thank you, Robert.
These are the brochures. They detail all 36 historical markers, and they give a little bit more information about if you want to do a driving tour or a walking tour, or also it gives a map so you can see where all the locations are. They're available in the Roswell Visitor Center if you guys want to pick them up. Also, the last thing that I did was I created a geocache to get young people, such as us, the Boy Scouts, to get interested in the history of Roswell. And basically a geocache is a scavenger hunt using the GPS coordinate system. So the way it works is you go to the website, and it has a bunch of questions, and it will say the Broadwell house was built in 19-blank-6, and you have to find that missing number, and then you put all the numbers together to get the final coordinate for the final cache. So it's just a fun way to learn about the history of Roswell.
So approximately, where is the geocache? I don't want to give anything away.
You'd have to figure it out by...
No, but approximately where in the city, not specifically.
You can do the tour, and then you can find out that way.
I'll have to call upon my buddy Stan, who is my geocache expert. and we'll have to look for it. He's located a couple of geocaches with me on mountain biking, but Robert, it's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
I want you to encourage the rest of those Star Scouts and your Life Scout to follow in your footsteps and become an Eagle. I very much appreciate your working on the historical markers. I know that your predecessor on that project was Emily Dolvin, Jimmy Carter's aunt, and for many years that was her job, is to take care of those historical markers. We've lost her many years ago, but it's good to see you picking up that project, and we're proud of our Boy Scouts here. Councilman Orland's made it to life. Councilmember DePolito made it to life. And this is a object lesson for you Boy Scouts. The mayor made it to Eagle, so keep going for Eagle. So welcome here, and thank you for the work. The Boy Scouts, there are a lot of Eagle projects in our city, all across the city, and you are joining good company with Eagles. One more hand for Robert Osborne. Good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Next, I have a proclamation to read and to thank Rick Case for Bikes for Kids Month. So I know at the lighting of the Christmas tree, we gave away a couple of bicycles. I believe they were donated by Rick Case. Whereas for 33 years now, Rita and Rick Case have been instrumental in supporting the gift of donations for underprivileged children by providing bicycles during the holiday season. And whereas starting the Rick Case Bike for Kids program 33 years ago, Rita and Rick Case initiated a program that has not only benefited children in need, but has provided an annual outlet for the community to easily step in and help by donating new or used bicycles that might have been in your garage, which are then distributed to grateful children and their families. And whereas hundreds of bicycles are collected and distributed each year in conjunction with the Boys and Girls Clubs and other local charities, providing an additional layer of community involvement and charitable education as the children learn the true meaning of it is better to give than to receive. And whereas the recipients are delighted children whose holiday is lifted by generous benevolence of the community and all those involved in the Rick Case Bike for Kids program. And whereas the City of Roswell would like to honor this commitment to community shown by the Rick Case Automotive Group, whose corporate philosophy is to contribute to the communities in which they do business, including helping children in need through their participation and contribution to the Boys and Girls Club, local charities, and their National Rick Case Bikes for Kids program. Now, therefore, I, Jerry Wood, declare December 2014 as Rick Case Bike for Kids Month, and encourage all to donate a used or new bicycle to the children, and to not only share in the holiday spirit, but to promote a healthy lifestyle in our bicycle-friendly community. So do we have a representative from Rick Case here tonight? Yes, sir.
Mayor Wood, how are you?
Good to have you here. Come forward.
Am I coming this way?
And if you could tell the audience and the council how they could participate in this Bikes for Kids program.
It's very, very simple. Am I speaking this way or this way?
You can
I don't know
speak,
what the
you
protocol
can
is.
put on a revolving stand and speak wherever you want.
Any old bicycle you may have, please take a few moments, bring it by the dealership, and we have a collection and we donate them right before Christmas Eve. You'd be amazed, for someone who doesn't have a lot, getting a bike that's been fixed up, how truly meaningful it is to them. Rick and Rita have been doing this for 33, 34 years. Every year we have ball players coming down donating their bikes. civil service, anybody, but just please, it's very simple. If you can't come, please contact the store and we will make arrangements to come get whatever you have. But almost everybody's got one or two of these old swim bikes or something stuck in the garage, just gathering dust, and you'd be amazed at what it will do for a child. We'd appreciate your participation. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's have a hand for Rick Case. Now, I would encourage you, if you've got a bicycle gathering dust, one, to either ride it or give it away. But there is no better way to. Roswell is a bicycle-friendly community. We appreciate your participation in this. So don't get rid of your bicycle. Buy a new bicycle and give the old one to Rick Case. Thank you. Let's get the council down here and get our picture taken with Rick Case. You're doing such a good job. Council, if you'll join us. We're a little short on council members. Kent arrived just in time for the photo op.
All right, we good? All right, 1, 2, 3, smile, and we'll do one more. There you go. Oh, do you want to get one more class? Okay.
Mike Fisher, I believe you have someone to introduce the audience.
Mayor and Council, thank you for this opportunity. I'm very happy to announce that our new HR director for the City of Roswell is here today, and this is his first day on the job, and he is able to be here tonight to kind of watch and get an idea of what all's going on so he can really jump in with both feet. So Jim Horner is here, and our HR director, and Jim, we're thankful that you're here, and looking forward to many great things coming out of the HR department. I don't know if anybody has any questions from the council or anything. I would like to introduce them.
We appreciate your coming on board. Your biggest job is to create a buffer between the council and the employees, because this council is awful tough.
All right.
And
We'll
your job is not to keep this council happy, but to keep our employees happy, and the best way to do that is to keep us straight.
Okay.
So thank you very much. Let's
Thank
have
you.
a hand for our new HR director.
Great. Great to be here. Thank you.
Morgan Rogers, if you'd come forward and do the presentation for the 2014 annual report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is my pleasure at this time to introduce the chairman of the Roswell Recreation Commission, Deborah Ewing, who will actually make the presentation of our annual report. Ms. Ewing.
Thank you so much for moving us up. Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Deborah Ewing. I'm Chair of the Recreation Commission, and I'm happy to be here tonight to talk about some highlights of our 2014 year. You can see our new report. Is it just so new and sparkling new and different? And we like the format a lot. But first of all, I want to thank you, Mayor and Council, for what you do for the department. Every year, you're generous during the budget time, and we certainly appreciate it, because we couldn't have the parks or the programs without your continued support. So thank you again. I know we thank you often, but probably not enough. First of all, Rec Commission. It is the best Rec Commission. We are all joined together at the hip. There's enthusiasm, there's excitement, there's new ideas. It's the best Recreation Commission that I've seen since I've been on it. Theo Kaiserling is here tonight. She's on the Rec Commission. I'd like to introduce her. Stand up, Theo. Stand up, Theo. She's one of our young, enthusiastic ones on the commission, and she loves parks. She lives for parks. But first of all, I don't want to read everything on this annual report, but I want to highlight some things. The gold medal finalist, 4th year in a row. We've had some in the commission that want to, kind of detach ourselves from NRPA, but we're going for it again. So, and I think it's important to remember that when you are a finalist, the top 4 finalists, every one of those finalists could be a gold medalist. It depends on the judging. It's subjective. So we're going to go for it again. We're going to just stay in their face and make them know us. Now, you know, nationally, everybody knows Roswell Recreational Parks. They know that department. So we're well known. We also received recently the Best Park Award from the Roswell Area Park, received the Best Park Award from the Applicant Media Group. And we went to, Morgan and I went to a function. It was very nice. And of course, we continue to get awards, baseball, dance, football, gymnastics. I tell you, that gymnastics program is something else. It's spectacular. And we really need to focus this year on maybe getting the boys' gymnastics moved somewhere to expand so we can open up that program because it is packed in there. Swimming, Theo is part of that adult swimming team that won this year. Synthetic turf fields, they've been a huge hit. It's cut down on our maintenance, cut down on the sod, the fertilizer, environmentally friendly, that's for sure. We are, as the commission is going to look at ways to maybe program and encourage staff to use that money that we're saving on other fields that we need to work on. Beautification, that $100,000, we've spent it all on park benches, picnic tables, and trash cans. We want a consistent look throughout the parks, and those, if you walk Roswell Area Park, I think they're starting to be installed in there, and they're very, very nice. It will last years and years and years, and they won't need painting either. So, shade structures, they're so important, and we try to add some each year. They're very expensive. As we replace playgrounds, we're going to add the shade structure to it. Nobody wants to go down that hot slide in the middle of the summer, so we want to be able to have kids be able to slide during the day. Roof replacement's a little boring, but necessary. We've done that. Roswell River Landing, I have not seen the improvements. Have any of you all been to Roswell River Landing? So I hear that inside and out beautification, update in the kitchen, restrooms. So that's been a very good moneymaker, and we did raise the rates on that too. Adaptive programs. This has been Morgan Rogers' baby and close to his heart for years, and we have increased the number of adaptive programs for kids. That's been a huge success. We've added cooking and soccer and baseball and basketball. And this summer, we had a day camp program for kids with disabilities. It didn't matter how bad your disabilities were, what they were, what you could afford. Jay Small is in charge of is president of our Roswell, hello there, Parks, in our foundation. And he helped raise and organize enough money for 72 kids to participate in this program this past summer. So I am sure that's going to be a signature program that Roswell will be recommended, will certainly be known for. Of course, we have our numerous events that take place during the year. You know, this year has been exciting, and it's also been a year of change. We are very, very excited to have Morgan Rogers at the helm. We think already he's going to bring some excitement. We think staff is excited. The Rec Commission was 100% enthusiastic about this appointment. Morgan, from day one, has focused on partnerships, and that's something that we're going to continue to focus on. Right now, we're developing partnerships with the school board, with Chattahoochee Nature Center, which has somewhat been a little iffy over the years. The National Park Service, Bill Cox is a big friend. We've started meeting with him. I think Morgan had a meeting with him the first week he was appointed. So this is going to really help our programs, our connections, our park connections, our trail connections through national park property, and to connect. Our goal is to connect Canton Street with the river, and we have to go through National Park Service land, and that seems to be, they seem to be very on board with that. So the daycare centers, we're also reaching out to the schools and daycare centers for programming. So we're excited about the year to come, maybe a gold medal. certainly a finalist again, and I think you're going to see some real changes, real excitement happen, not only in our parks, but on our programming, and the young managers in the department are very excited. So thank you again for your support. We really appreciate it.
Deborah, I'm looking forward to a exciting, energetic year and all the things that are happening. And I encourage all the citizens, if they have ideas for our rec department, to bring them to you and to Morgan. I know we've got big plans down on the river with a master plan.
Yes.
And we've just opened up, or just started on you mentioned the Senior Aquatic Center.
Yes, yes.
Which is going to be a great addition. So our rec program, which is in my mind the best in the nation, is only becoming better every year. So let's have a hand for the rec department. Rec Moore. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to work. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second? Councilman DePillipo, was that a question?
It's not a question. I would like to remove item number 2, or I can recuse myself from the vote, either one.
Let's just recuse yourself. No, do I have a quorum?
Yeah.
If you'll recuse yourself, then we can move right along.
All right, thank you.
Do I have a second to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Eigelhart. All in favor, raise their hands. That's Councilman Orleans, Eigelhart, and Diamond. That passes. You may return. Kent Eigelhart, our liaison to Admin Finance Department, is up next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our first item is the contract with Provectus for the wellness program and related services in the estimated amount of $128,140. And we're not going to throw our new director in right at the start.
Oh yeah, where's he at? Jim, come on.
But Mr. Fisher will tell us about that.
I think we'll go ahead and do this one, let Jim get on with the next one when that time comes, some other point in time in life. This is an item that was deferred from the November 24th Mayor and Council meeting. I know there was a lot of additional information that was requested. This was a proposal number 14205-C for a wellness program for the city of Roswell. The proposal was sent out. There were 5 responses that ranged in price from $86,112 to $192,000. The evaluation committee received the responses back in, had oral presentations. After the oral presentations and the information that was learned from the committee, they made a recommendation for Provectus Health Strategies to provide the wellness program for the city of Roswell. So we would ask for your approval of Provectus as the wellness provider.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Diamond.
Michael, can you tell me, I see something about 1 year and then I see a 3-year program in some of the notes. Is this a 1-year contract or?
This is a 1-year program that we are doing. We look for a long term, generally, if we can get in with the vendor that does a progressive plan. But if my understanding is correct, we're looking at a 1 year for right now. They have shown us what it would do over the course of several years, and their plan is to continue to move it forward just like ours would be, but it's just a 1 year.
And I see the information, and I apologize, I just flew in a couple of hours ago, so I'm a little behind on this, but I see the information that on the Provectus proposal, kind of an outline, I had asked about an outline of what exactly we're seeing them each do, but I don't see it on any of the other vendors.
The information we gave was just in general of what a program might look like. It's hard to give specifics of what it will look like because part of the RFP is for the vendor to come in and work with us to learn what our goals are and what our objectives are, and then they will put a program together with input from the city and the experience that they already have. So what we've provided is what a employee may see, what the program might look like.
For
And which page are you looking on?
Well, I see that additional information requested, and then it talks about our general, what we look for a couple of pages.
Correct?
And then it says what sets Provectus apart.
Correct.
And then all the backup information is Provectus, but there were a number of other vendors.
The recommendation that is laid out was for Provectus. That's why we put this information in of what sets them apart from the others. I thought that was kind of the information we were looking for.
So this is a staff written
Correct.
report? Okay.
Based on the information that was given in all of the proposals.
Okay.
We took that information, pulled out what makes the Provectus, our recommendation, what we think unique, what the evaluation committee looked through to make their decision. Now, the last part is the reporting that they provide, and they actually provided a sample of their reporting. We wanted to put that in to show you what the matrix was and what information that they generally measure.
And I don't want to keep putting you through the mill over this. I guess
That's
when
okay.
I look at our wellness program, and our goal after last year was, we had a 3-week program and an 8-week program, and it seemed like there was a desire to keep people more engaged longer and even
Correct.
ongoing.
Correct.
And that location of services was important. And it just seems like a local provider would, I guess where I'm having trouble is we have a local provider who is significantly less money, who is located in the city. How do we justify that they're not going to get to know our folks and continue for years down the road?
I'm sure if they ultimately would be the ones doing the wellness program, they would get to know who our employees are. This particular vendor is one that came in with a track record that could demonstrate this type of program and a long-term program. They have 5 years with one of their other clients. They have a 3-year program. They can show us what's outlined as a 3-year, and they've demonstrated their results. So we take that, and that got a lot of value for what they can provide, some of the unique things that they had. Their accountability was very good to bring us from where we were, which was a participation model. Participation model to an accountability model was very important to us. And that was another thing that Provectus was able to demonstrate, that once they started out in year 1 with some of their participants just being able to show up and be a part of the program, in the years that followed, as they got more into accountability, then they started showing a savings in the claims and a savings to that local government. That meant a lot to us that they could demonstrate that. So I don't know that any of the other vendors wouldn't come in and make a relationship, but when we're trying to pick which one from a committee seems to us to be able to provide a really good overall program and one that could give some lasting results with accountability in there, Provectus was clearly the winner.
Thank you.
Fisher. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve the contract with Provectus.
Motion to approve the contract by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or contracts regarding this contract? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
The next item is also related to wellness. This is for, well, kind of. This is the Occupational Health Services provider. And we're looking at a contract with North Fulton Hospital, Tenet Healthcare Corporation, the amount of $15,700.
Correct. Thank you, Councilmember Eichelhardt. Again, this is one that was deferred from the last council meeting. There was some confusion, and I want to apologize for the way that I reported this out. I didn't make it very clear. There was confusion regarding the cost that was associated with this program. I think the mayor had asked some very good questions. One had to do with what the costs have been over the last couple of years, so there was some additional information given to you all. The last year, fiscal year 14, the total for all of the occupational health and as well as emergency services or workers' comp was $89,488. In FY13, it was $72,009, so around $80,000 to $90,000 a year. The $15,700 that is in this item, to be able to compare the different vendors, because all of this is a pay-for by service, to compare all the different vendors. In the proposal that was sent out, there was a specific menu of items to bid off of, so that we could get some apples to apples on what exactly it cost. And that ended up being $15,700 is what the price was from North Fulton. So in fact, of course, that is in the fund that we use to pay for this, and there's a lot more money in there. But the actual cost is around $80,000 to $90,000 a year by the time we do all of these different things, the drug screens, the alcohol test for the DOT, the pre-employment screens that we do, and then any workers' comp.
So I'm just confused.
Okay.
The $90,000 would be all of the service we anticipate, but all they're bidding on is $15,000, which is a small segment of this.
They're bidding on all of it ultimately, but to figure out what their prices were compared with the other people, they're bidding on a certain menu of items. But they will be the provider that will provide all of the services.
So we anticipate
$80,000 to $90,000.
Historically, about $90,000.
Yes, sir. The 15 was only for us to be able to look at one compared to the other, so that one didn't bid on.
So we sort of said, what does this service cost, and what does this service cost, and you took the individual service items.
Correct. If this was if this is what we needed, what would it cost? That way, everybody could give us a price on the same thing.
If somebody has an emergency call, that's what the emergency call is. If somebody has a hangnail, that's what the hangnail. So it's not the total, but it's the a itemized list of individual costs.
Correct.
Does the council understand it? Councilman Orleans.
Mr. Fisher, taking that approach and looking at the unit cost here versus the two of them that you've got on the page of your memo December 1st. The other one is got lower unit cost in every item except, of course, one. So
correct.
I guess using your examples, how did the 15,700 come out to be a lower number?
It did not come out to be a lower number. They were not, the people with the lowest score were not the highest point value. They got the total number of points allowed for their price, but there were a lot of other things that they could not provide that North Fulton Tenet Health Systems could. So North Fulton Tenet Health Systems was certainly the highest score of this RFP. They happen to not be the lowest on price. The other people, Roswell Urgent Care, got the most points awarded to them because of their price, but there were many other things that they did not. So North Fulton is the highest points, the highest score for this RFP.
Okay, thank you.
Does the council have any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Move for approval of the contract with North Fulton Hospital Tenet Healthcare.
Motion by Councilman Eigelhart to approve the contract. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
This time, Councilmember Becky Wynn being absent with an excuse, and Councilmember Betty Price is also absent with an excuse. I will ask our City Administrator, Kay Love, to read the Community Development Calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item is RZ 201402-562 and CV 201402-563, Barrington Place, Land Lot 376, Spring Drive, King Street, Marietta Highway. This item was deferred at the November 10 meeting. Applicant has requested further deferral. Mr. Townsend?
The applicant is requesting a deferral to the January 12th, 2015 meeting. They are actively meeting with the neighbors in the area, and with the holiday schedules would request additional time to be able to do that. So they're requesting deferral to the January 12th, 2015 meeting date.
Do we have anyone here in the audience who came to be heard on this matter? If you'd raise your hands, please. All right. So let's first see if the council wants to consider the deferral. Do we have? Well, let me just open it up for the folks on the floor. A request having been made, what is does the neighborhood have a position on whether they object to a deferral or would agree to a deferral? Has there been any communication between the applicant and the neighborhood?
Last night.
If you'll come forward, please. Give us your name and address. And you,
I'm Martha Harrell. I live at 109 Spring Drive across the street from the development.
all right. So,
Most of these folks over here in red are with the neighborhood.
all right.
We tried to meet with the developer, and he canceled the day of the meeting on November the 19th. We worked to reschedule, and we met with them yesterday afternoon. We as a neighborhood were disappointed because we had met as a neighborhood, had come up with the what we wanted and what we were happy about having, and we submitted it. We sent emails to all of y'all, and we also submitted it to him. They have not done anything. He hired an attorney to facilitate our meetings and just asked us what we wanted. And we've told them over and over again that our main problem was the density, and that we were not okay with going from RS 18 to 4, and that we could maybe feel okay about an RS 12, but he had not done anything. When we asked him what his needs and what he wanted, he said he didn't know yet.
Is the applicant here tonight? Or represented? Yes, sir, if you'd come forward.
Shall I go back to my seat?
For the moment.
I'm John Paulson Mitchell. We did have some scheduling conflicts. We did meet last night. We plan to meet Wednesday of this week and Tuesday of the following week. We will have a drawing to our neighbors tomorrow afternoon for our Wednesday meeting.
Well, I'm trying to see if the parties are willing to compromise, or is there any room for movement on either side?
No, there's definitely movement. There's definitely movement.
All right. What's the council's pleasure? There is a request for a deferral. Councilmember Diamond.
Given that the neighbors have been through this several times with several applicants and we're this far down the road, I would move to defer this and see if we can't come to a resolution next month.
When would you move to defer it to?
January 12th.
Let me ask the neighborhood and the applicant if they'll have time to meet between now and that date, because without meetings, there's no reason for a deferral.
Yes, we will again. I'm sorry.
If I can hear from the neighborhood, you think that gives y'all time to meet? I know that this is a busy season.
Will y'all stand up to everybody that's here from the neighborhood? Thank you. We gave them dates when we were sitting there yesterday, and we have Thursday was the first one, and they said that was good, and I said, well, then we need the second one, because I'm not sure that since you don't know what you want yet, and you're going to finally come up with what you want, then we're not sure that that's going to be enough. So we have a meeting scheduled for Thursday and another one scheduled for the following Tuesday. But we know that a lot of people are going to be out of town the week of Christmas and the week of New Year's, so we needed to have this done quickly.
Do you think that you'll have the people back for the city council hearing? What was the date again?
January 12th.
January 12th.
Oh, yes, and this is not half of them.
But you think you have are you comfortable with a rescheduling on the 12th?
Are y'all okay? I'm comfortable with that, yes.
Is the applicant comfortable with that? Thank you, sir. Do we have a motion to defer to the 12th by Councilmember Diamond. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Orleans. Any further comments? Councilmember Eichelhardt.
Just one, because I know a number of us have probably talked to a number of folks here, and at least the indications I've got is it hasn't been going very well. So I think I would just caution and please ask that it do go well between now and the 12th, or else I don't think we're wasting our time and we're wasting everybody else's time. So take that as a warning, please.
Does the neighborhood need any assistance from city staff, or does the applicant need any assistance from city staff between now and the next meeting?
I don't think so.
All right, if don't call me. I would appreciate the call, but I'm not the one who would be of assistance. Mr. Townsend, are you the person to call?
Yes, sir.
If you'll call the Community Development Department, and if they don't respond, I'll be there, but they're much more knowledgeable than I am.
I will tell you one thing that needs to happen. I thought that after it got deferred the last time, that like one of those bumper stickers saying when the new thing was, should have been put up on the yellow signs, and nothing was ever put up.
Mr. Townsend, can we take care of that and put a new date up?
We'll put a new date on the sticker.
I also looked in the paper and never saw it posted for the meeting today.
We usually don't do a new ad.
Typically, we don't post it in the paper, but we will put it on the sign, and I am sure with the great representation the neighborhood has that the word will get out. Any further discussion before we take a vote? All in favor of deferral, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Thank you for your patience and your willingness to work together. It makes us, we're much happier when y'all are happy and you're much more happy to work something out.
Next item is RZ 2014-02071, Creekview Village, land lot 417, South Atlanta Street. This item was deferred at the November 10th meeting. Mr. Townsend.
This is one of the last two items actually being processed under the old code. Their application was made prior to June 1st. This is a revision to an approved site plan. This is the location of the property on South Atlanta Street. You can see the existing two condominium buildings. The property was scheduled for 3 more condominium buildings. Those buildings were never built. The applicant is requesting to amend that site plan to allow for 31 townhomes to be developed on the subject property. It's a little over 3 acres in size. This gives you the location map, the downtown residential zoning of the area of the condominium that's proposed. This is the preliminary proposed site plan showing the townhomes. There are sufficient parkings provided on the property. This application was also submitted to the Historic Preservation Commission. Their information was taken into account and redesign was taken place. They have moved the garage locations in particular to comply with the Historic Preservation Commission's request. This has been to the Planning Commission. They have recommended approval with staff conditions. Staff would recommend approval with the conditions included in your resolution before you this evening.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Diamond.
Mr. Townsend, it looks like there were 69 units originally slated to be built.
Correct.
Approved. And how many will this net us?
This will get them to 69.
Okay.
With the existing ones in the existing 2 buildings plus the proposed townhomes gets them to 69.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend, I have a number of questions. And I guess the first question is for clarification. Since this is under the old code, do then all the buffers and restrictions of C2, well, I guess the front was C2. Well, let me ask my question. I'm going to ask it in 2 parts.
Okay.
Do all the requirements, setbacks, buffers, and so forth of the prior zoning apply to the site plan? And the second part of my question is, was all of this property, including the frontage where the, I guess it's retail is now, was all that part of the original zoning?
I'll answer the second part of the question. No, that original part, because they added some additional land to the next application. So that original part was not part of the originals. When you look at, that doesn't show it very well.
Well, and one of the reasons I asked that while you're looking for that is under the background, it suggests that there needs to be sufficient right-of-way along the property frontage, but this doesn't look like it has any right-of-way.
This one would not. The next application does require additional right-of-way.
But I'm looking at the background for this property. That's what's confusing about it. Because the background was for the 1999
Right.
zoning.
In the 1999 zoning, that area that led up to Atlanta Street was included in that zoning. This additional property here was not.
Okay.
And what they had approved originally was a street that came straight in, but it was actually developed with this sweeping curve, and that's actually going to be straightened out with the next approval.
Okay.
The
All
first
right.
question,
Yep.
the designation was R4, but also in the historic district. So it's taking the characteristics and setbacks of the HR for the townhouse development to be compliant with those requirements in HR.
So all of this was zoned R4, including the part that you outlined in red?
Yes. No?
Because I thought from reading this that the portion that you had outlined in red was C2, which qualifies it for the historic
Yes.
overlay.
That's why they get the next application,
Okay,
because that was C2 for that mixed use to allow.
okay. But then in looking at these two projects, I know that the C2 portion comes
Right.
at the next part. But do we have to look at buffer requirements between C2 and R4 when we consider these applications and setback requirements?
I may have to ask legal on that. The tricky part relates to that is C2 and R4 don't exist.
Right.
So we're trying to apply something that we have a section of the code that does no longer exist, but they're making application to apply for those types of uses in that type of development.
Right, and if we're zoning it, if we're zoning the site plan, making the assumptions of the C2 and the R4, then we need to make the same assumptions for all of the requirements.
Right.
And that's, yeah, I don't necessarily have an issue with the project, I just want to make sure that we're following the right set of rules for it.
Right. I believe we have tried to follow the correct rules in processing it, and we've tried to put in the buffers that would be required at the appropriate locations. I mean, when you have, they're meeting the stream buffer requirements down the side, but you're right. They're probably the buffers between R4 and, Jackie? Okay, what Jackie's whispering to me is the buffer would be required in the back because that's the perimeter of the HR district. The HR district eliminates the buffers between.
Okay.
That's why we feel we're on good ground.
Okay. No, well, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
And I still have some other questions. Going back to the background, I guess there were 9 conditions that applied to this approval. You answered the question about how the right-of-way works, and maybe both of these are, actually the one question I guess is really for the next portion, which has the commercial, and that is, does that 50-foot right-of-way requirement continue forward?
Yes.
So they have in their application provided the right-of-way that transportation is looking for along Alpharetta Highway?
We're requesting a condition in that approval that would require the right-of-way needed.
Okay, so that may have changed, but we're getting this sufficient amount of right-of-way for the Historic Gateway project?
Yes, that's my understanding. Hopefully they're shaking their,
I'm
are they
looking at my
shaking their heads the
transportation
right way
guys.
that way?
They're looking at me.
Okay.
The question restated is, do we have sufficient right-of-way in the rezoning for the Historic Gateway project?
Without having an approved set of engineering plans, yes, to the best of our knowledge, we do.
Okay, that's good enough for me, thank you. Then my last set of questions.
And that was Rob Del Ross from the engineering department.
Thank you, Rob. My next set of questions should be a little easier. Who's the developer?
I don't know if there is a developer name, but the applicant is the property owner. I don't know that he can represent who I don't believe they are going to be the developers. I believe they're going to probably, sell it to a developer.
Okay, which kind of leads to my next question. These are probably for the applicant, who the builder is and what townhouses are going to look like. So I'd like to learn a little bit about that as well. All right, thank you.
Site plan, it shows in the curve, it looks like a little stub out street. Is that intention to potentially connect, or what's going on there?
Are you looking at the next site plan?
I'm looking at the site plan that's on the overhead.
Is this, you're talking that?
No. Go north, yes. What's happening right there?
The short story is, with the development of the roundabout in this general location, transportation is looking at maybe a future connection to that area and having connectivity to a future road or future driveway.
Well, I'm a big believer in connectivity, but does this give us that potential, because it doesn't go to the edge and we don't have an easement, and is transportation can tell us how this might lead to connectivity, and do we need an easement or to get to the edge of the property if this stops before it gets to the edge of the property?
The fifth condition that we're recommending in the resolution identifies future access to tie into the roundabout as required by City of Roswell Transportation Department shall be indicated on the preliminary and final plats.
What does that mean?
That means you're adding it as a condition. Once we determine with the roundabout location, we'll make sure it's on a preliminary plat before they get permits.
What does it mean as far as this little stub street potential connection?
That is their desired location for it to stub out.
That may not be, but so if you'll read that condition, I'm not sure that condition was clear.
Future access to tie into the roundabout as required by the City of Roswell Transportation Department shall be indicated on the preliminary and final plats.
So Clyde is mouthing something, if you can help us here. I'm never real comfortable when I've got, and maybe the developer may not be either, when it's this much up in the air.
When we are going through these development reviews, we try to put on the applications the process of considering where they would put it. And we're most interested in their connection where they determine is best for them. And what we try to do then through the LDP process is get the final connection in its final location. So at this point, we're good with it being a general location because it's in that area, it's in that corner, and that's fine with us.
Is my city attorney comfortable with this condition that will give us the right to make a connection without having to acquire and pay for right-of-way?
I think you have a council member that might want to add something or change that just a little bit.
Well, then I will be quiet because I am not really comfortable the way it reads currently. It's a little loose. Other questions? Councilmember Orleans.
So, Mr. Townsend, in total with the two projects that are kind of going together, we're going to have 58 residential units and one small commercial building to the front, and this is being set up as a mixed-use development under our UDC thought process. but I guess because it came in before UDC, none of this is up on Highway 9. We're going to have parking lot up on Highway 9.
Right.
So does this fit both zoning categories, or? And talking about it being called mixed use, did we have a mixed use before the UDC? I'm trying to understand.
The mixed use we had before the UDC was actually drafted for the boutique hotel concept.
Right.
In the historic district under C1 or C2 zoning designation to allow for a mixture of uses. So that's the applicant's desire and what they have made application for.
Under a boutique hotel?
No.
I'm trying to understand the two sides of this coin, you know? If it's going to be mixed use under UDC, it should be up to the street, not a parking lot on Alfred Highway. If it's not, we don't have a mixed use.
With the application applying before the UDC became effective, it's applying under the old HR conditional use zoning district, and it meets those requirements.
And it does meet those requirements.
Correct.
Thank you. Councilmember Eichelhard.
I was actually saving this for the next one because it's more to the road, but given what you just said, we're now in December, basically into January. We're just now hearing this. Why didn't we have it come in after January, after July 1 to hit? Because it's been deferred how many times that's just been out there. Seems like, or is there any way, is that not possible at this point to make it UDC at this point? Because in the process, I mean, my point being, it seemed like it easily could have been applied for after July 1, given the fact we've been sitting around for 6 months here. And normally I'd definitely not be saying let's switch over to it, but it actually would make sense because
I mean, the applicant's the one that applied when they applied. You might want to ask them that question.
Because the longer term issue is that we're trying to fix that area of the whole town, and yet we're putting the old thing, a new old thing, right on the street.
Right.
So that's the concern.
Any other questions? Councilmember Diamond.
So I have a question about when we get to conditions, if we get that far, about tying ourselves into a roundabout. I don't know what future intersection or road improvement that might be, but I might play with that wording. So in answer to kind of mitigate what the UDC, what our intent is for that area, with or without the UDC, where does this go from here? Does it go to HPC? Does it go to DRB?
HPC will review the building locations. They will then first do a preliminary plat, and then a land disturbance permit. For building permits, they'll go to the Historic Preservation Commission.
So where is there an opportunity for us to maybe put some landscaping in the front and make that more of the look we're looking for on the front?
That would be HPC's requirement with your direction
But
dealing with.
can they require that? This is legal. Can they require landscaping on the front to give us more of that?
You have to make it a condition of this rezoning that would tie them to what they're proposing.
Okay. That's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess to ask a similar question in a different way, how the townhouse portion that we're discussing now, does this conform to the townhouse zoning under the UDC? Anybody look at it from that perspective?
In a lot of respects, it does. We had them turn the garages particular away. The first, actually, I gotta go on this.
Because in looking at it, I don't see anything to me that makes
This
it
line,
inconsistent.
This line, they had the garages facing this way. Now we have the fronts with the garages in the rear. So I believe we control the maximum number, right, in the UDC? I think they meet, they don't exceed 8 attached together. Was the width right, 20 feet? I don't remember about the width, whether we were talking about 20 feet or not.
Okay, so I guess the answer is we don't know.
I think we need to ask the applicant about the width.
Okay. One last question. Under the old conditions, which I assume now all the old conditions then go away, is that correct?
Yeah.
So there was a condition in here to dedicate 100 feet along Big Creek for the purpose of expanding the Roswell Trail system. I didn't see that condition carrying forward.
I think it was already done. Wasn't it on the survey?
That was dedicated already?
Jackie's going to check the survey, but I thought that one was already complied with for them to pull the permits.
For the original
buildings?
buildings?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're going to check the survey for that.
All right, thank you.
The staff. This time we'll hear from the applicant.
Should I go first? You want to go first? Hi, good evening. My name is Vinay Bose, and I'm the applicant along with Michael Lober and our engineering firm Travis Pruitt and Associates, Mr. Anderson and Mr. Blumenthal are also here to answer your questions. You all have asked quite a few questions about this, and I'm itching to answer your questions actually. And one of the issues here is you're seeing 2 parcels. They're tract 1 and tract 2. If you see them together, it makes it easier, and as per your regulation, we can only present one at a time. So we started with tract 2. And I want to give a real brief background, and I hope it answers a couple of your questions. One was this property was acquired just before the big crash and the recession. So we had no choice but to wait. And just as we were coming out of the recession, we realized that the zoning is going to change. So what was going to happen to us was this zoning in the front parcel tract number 1 was going to go from commercial to residential. And this is still residential in the back with 2 buildings. And so we applied before May 30th, which I hope answers Mr. Egelsart's question about that. And so we made that application to preserve that as a mixed use, so we could get that in. And the reason for us to the reason it took so long to get here is we really bent backwards working with the neighborhood. So if we had the exact opposite problem of the previous folks that left here. And Ms. Jackie had arranged a meeting for us with the neighborhood folks, and we had it in the room, in the next room over. They really beat us to death, which actually put us in a situation where we acquired this property adjacent just to have this road. There was a big issue with the neighbors who wanted one road with all these units in the back. So we have really bent backwards, and there's no back left to bend anymore. And we do have the homeowners association also with us, and they support our project now. And actually it would be easier if you all ask questions. I'd be more than happy to answer. Mr. Brad, Ms. Jackie, and everybody in the department are really helpful to us in telling us all the problems we're going to hit, and we kept correcting them. That's why it took us a while to get here. And now we are here. We're very happy that we are here this evening. You want to?
Are you comfortable with all the conditions that staff is recommending?
To be honest with you, I didn't understand 100% of it. But if I have no choice, I'm comfortable, yes.
Okay.
And one question, one question about your builders, which builder is developing. Here's the thing. We have real quality builders, developers. I don't know if I can put their names out front, but they said, finish this process because we started the application. If they come and take over, we'll fall under the new rules, and then the value is not as much. And so that's why we have to finish this process, then we get to hand over.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions for the applicant? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. I guess the question came up about the width of the townhouses. Do you have a width? Obviously, you show them on here, but there's no dimension shown.
One of the previous layouts had 25-foot wide front entry units. Under the current UDC, that would not be allowed. That's why we switched to the 20-foot wide rear entry units. So it does comply with the current UDC.
And that's correct, our staff? Okay. All right. And so do you have any sense of what the townhouses would look like?
Actually, this is a very easy answer. When we went in front of the historic preservation folks, we saw how they were conducting their business. So they're going to be really beautiful, and because our price point is around $475 to $500, and so they're going to be have that historic look. Like they actually gave a good description of what it needs to look like, and they even made us change our drawings, which we did. And so it'll be compliant, whatever the historic preservation folks want it to look like.
And I guess ultimately this goes in front of the HPC for their design approval. Okay. The one other question I had, I know staff was looking into it, was the dedication of the 100 feet for the trail, and you were nodding back there, so
yeah.
I'm assuming that has taken place already?
My understanding it took place quite some time ago.
Okay, so it was even prior to you
before we acquired the
acquiring?
property, yes.
Okay. Have we been able to confirm that?
We can't confirm it, so it's okay to put the condition on. If it's been done, the condition doesn't mean anything.
Okay, so if it has been done, then it's just, even though it's a condition, it's considered complete?
Right.
But if it's not, then it
Then
can
we
be
know we
added.
get it, right.
And there's no impact to the site plan
Right.
because there's a 100-foot buffer there anyway.
Yes. Correct.
So this is just allowing the city to use it.
Correct.
And that would be acceptable?
Yes, Your Honor.
So you're just gonna bring condition number 9 on the previous approval forward. That becomes condition number 6.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Orleans.
And it's following up on what I was kind of talking about earlier, and it does more apply to the next partial. But I'm asking it so you have the chance of looking at this whole thing and answering. But what we're trying to do under the UDC is bring buildings in the mixed use and the commercial up to the street and pedestrian friendly. Where on yours, you're gonna have a parking lot up there with that small commercial building, and it looks like that's also set back. Is there any thoughts, or have you looked at trying to reconfigure that so that it would meet more with the UDC on, not on all the details of it, but on the concept of what we're trying to do to get street frontage?
Yes.
The current building shown, I think, is set back because there's a pedestrian patio there that we were requested to put there, and it's also set back for the right-of-way dedication, which you can't see.
Right, okay.
So it's actually improving the lot because the current building is much further back,
Right.
and the parking lot, we're pretty much cutting it in half and leaving one half, I guess, still on the road, but we are improving the site by bringing the proposed building closer to the road.
But there's no way you could work with reconfiguring to remove the parking from the front?
I think with that
try to-
connective road that we were trying to create by purchasing that additional property, it hinders. We'd have to split the existing building into two smaller buildings, which probably wouldn't be as efficient for one. And we're trying to keep the parking lot, where it is for, I guess, development reasons.
Thank you.
But we can, I think, in the HPC process, landscape that area and hopefully make it, a nice property to look at.
This time we'll hear from the public and then give you all opportunity for rebuttal if there's anything you want to counter.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone in the audience wish to be heard on this matter? This is your opportunity if you either want to say anything for or against or just have questions. Yes, sir, if you'll give us your name and address.
Brett Thurman, I'm here with my wife Ann Thurman. We own 2 units in the existing property next door, and we're real happy with how we've been worked with, and I'm on the board of the HOA there, and we've had a lot of changes, and it's a very good project from the view of the board and the neighbors next door, and I almost feel bad we put them through so much already. So if we've squeezed and squeezed and squeezed and gotten a lot of cooperation.
You made our job easy.
Well, maybe you guys see some things we missed, but we put them through a lot, and we're ready to move forward.
Well, I want to thank all parties for working together on this. Does anyone else wish to speak? Doesn't sound like a lot of rebuttal. I'll give you any closing words you'd like to say before we turn it back to council.
Yes, one very important thing. I plan on living here in the
Welcome to Roswell.
Yes, in the back. So it is going to be beautiful.
Welcome to Roswell.
Yes.
Council, any discussion before we entertain a motion? Councilmember Wynn is not here, so it's open for anybody who wants to make a motion. Councilmember Diamond.
Take a stab at it.
Gentlemen, y'all may have a seat.
Move to approve a resolution recommending the City of Roswell Mayor and Council grant approval to the requested site plan amendment, change of conditions request regarding case number RZ 2014-02071 located at 285 Atlanta Street with the conditions set forth by staff with 2 exceptions. On number 5, that it would read future vehicular access to tie into the South Atlanta Street improvements as required by the city, blah, blah, blah. And then number 6 would be the addition of number 9 on the previous approval with the 100-foot trail.
What was number 9?
The 100-foot trail.
Next to Big Creek.
Dedication, the developer shall dedicate to the City of Roswell the portion of the property abutting Big Creek, a distance of 100 feet along the stream banks. This property will be for the expansion of the Roswell Trail System.
Thank you. Councilmember Eichelhardt.
Previous question was about the landscaping. Do we just think that HPC is going to deal with that by itself?
Well, that's going to be on the second.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Okay. Never mind.
Do we have a second? Councilmember DiPolito seconds the motion. Any further? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just wanted to second the motion, but I wanted to clarify that the addition of condition number 6 is the additional 100 feet, or the 100 feet is only required if it hasn't already been dedicated.
Correct.
Not an additional 100
Right.
feet. So just to clarify that.
Thank you for the clarification. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Welcome to Roswell.
Next item is C.
That was easy, right?
Next item, the companion item is CU 2014-02072 Creekview Mixed Use, Land Lot 417, Atlanta Street. This item was also deferred from the November 10 meeting.
Yes, this is a proposed site plan under the prior conditional use HR designation. This is a proposed site plan with 4,000 square feet of retail, a condo building containing 7 units and 12 townhomes. This is the subject property. Actually, that aerial's wrong. It's including the parcel right next to it with the 3 buildings should be included. This is the proposed site plan showing the one commercial building next to South Atlanta Street, the condo building, and then behind that are the townhouse designations. This property was C2 with the HR overlay designation. That's what they're being brought on under with the conditional use process, asking for this development. That conditional use section was 10.36 under the prior zoning ordinance. This application was reviewed by the Planning Commission, recommended approval. Staff recommends approval with the conditions in the resolution before you. These are the 5 conditions at this time, if you have any questions.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Depolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Townsend, on the historic overlay, is there any requirement with respect to pulling the building forward toward the right-of-way or any coverage along the street? And I remember when we passed that overlay, the intention was to allow for mixed use, but it was really trying to make it pulled up to the street, although the project we wound up approving had kind of a plaza that you pulled into because that hotel.
Right.
But I think we even had them put, if I recall correctly, some structures right along Atlanta Street. And to my recollection, we only passed one, maybe we did 2, but
right.
Just trying to understand the requirements of that overlay, and does this actually meet that? Because to me, it would seem that there would be more of a need for the buildings to be closer to the street and, as my colleagues pointed out, not have the exposed parking areas and so forth.
Mm-hmm. The historic properties overlay district mixed use was actually going back to a 2007 town square charrette at the time. I think that's where it was drafted from. Allows the mixed use of development, office, retail, and residential, as well as hotels. The mixed-use proposal should include public spaces defined as beneficial to the general public as determined by the Planning and Zoning Director, as reviewed by conditional approval by Mayor and City Council after conceptual review by the Historic Preservation Commission. It's under the Mayor and Council's purview to grant the conditional use and to identify any public spaces, green space, plazas. Future development shall conform to the conditional use. And then they have some minor guidelines, which actually we pulled in at the time, the MPMUD in that section dealing with some of the guidelines for the requirements. But there wasn't anything that specifically said what would the front setback be, because we were looking for it mostly to be building at the time. And the setbacks actually were identified to be the same as the C1 zoning, which were zeros for that designation.
Okay, so given that, where is the public space, green space that we talked about, or that you mentioned in there?
That's the front of the building. This was the public plaza that they had identified on their plan.
I thought that was described as a patio. It says accessible plaza.
Right.
The intention of, I mean, is it a public space or is it a private patio for a restaurant?
I'll answer to them. They'll use it for both.
I guess that's a question for the applicant.
Right.
All right, so with the exception of how we interpret public space, which is not clearly defined in that overlay.
Right.
You think it meets the conditional use requirements of the overlay?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Other questions for staff? Hearing no other questions for staff, we'll hear from the applicant again.
Vinay Bose again for the applicant, and I'm open to the questions because we already presented it. You have anything to add? No.
Does the council have any questions for the applicant? Councilmember DiPolito.
I guess the question I posed to Mr. Townsend is to the requirement for the public space. What exactly is the plaza that you described there?
You answer. Go ahead.
This is Mike Lober for the applicant. The public space is on the frontage of the road. I think the overlay in the mixed use really taught more in the sense of when you had a walkable area, which is trying to get there. We had a little more space at one point, but the neighbors wanted the buildings moved up a little bit, so that accounted for some of that, and they wanted make sure there's additional parking, so that accounted for some of that issue as well. It's not really designed for a restaurant. When we acquired this property back in 2007, this was always actually started out to be my law office, moving it there, and with the economy, we've slowed it and now have moved it forward. So the use wouldn't be, I think, the anticipated use is not to put a restaurant in that space, but rather to have a little patio where people walking down the street can sit down. And as that roundabout gets built and we do make the improvements along South Atlanta Street, it'd be a nice resting place to stop along there if you want to go across the coffee shop or what have you. So I think that was the concept that is in the front of the building there.
I'd like to join you to rest there someday.
We'd be happy to have you, Mayor.
So that will not be a gated area, that will be open to the public?
Yes, that's what the overlay in the mixed-use concept calls for.
Good. It's a good place to rest after you climb the big hill on your bicycle.
Well, once the mayor decides to get that bicycle safe, because when I ride from Northcliffe over there, I give up now. I leave my bike at the Riverside Park and just walk the rest of the way.
Other questions?
I have another question.
Yes, Councilmember DiPolito.
The two driveways on this plan are very close together. And I know the intent is once there is some sort of access over to the roundabout to abandon one of them. But has there been any thought to leaving just the main driveway that goes back into the condominiums and leaving and closing off that other driveway now?
With that kind of comment, the neighbor would come and they would pretty much kill us. So
Well, we wouldn't want that to happen.
I wish you were there 3 months back supporting us in that point. We wouldn't have gone through that. But yes, like Mr. Brad mentioned, we will close it off once the roundabout comes, which is right adjacent to this property right here. This roundabout is supposed to come right here. The church is on this side, and once the roundabout comes, we can kill the road and just access it from there. And the other point about the green space, actually, the city is going to expand and make this 4 lanes, so we are dedicating that additional road. So we had in the very original drawings before the city asked for that extra road was also green space. So we are giving it towards the road. And if that makes sense.
So Well, it's showing South Atlanta Street has a 50-foot right-of-way. So are you saying that's the existing right-of-way, or you're dedicating additional right-of-way? Because I have a couple concerns here, and maybe we could talk through all of it at the same time. One is we want to make sure that we have enough right-of-way for the roundabout and for the historic gateway, because I know we're not finished designing it yet, but we're pretty far along that we have a pretty good estimate of where that needs to be. And the second half of my question there is you pointed on your plan that on the north side, that road could come down and access the roundabout, but you have a building in the way. So I guess it's kind of a two-part question. First part is really for our transportation staff. Have we really made sure that we have enough right-of-way here for what we need to do in the future? And I guess my second part of that question to you is, how are you going to get to the roundabout because you don't have access? You have a building in the way.
The way I understand, the roundabout is supposed to be here, and it's supposed to go straight down here.
That's not, the roundabout's not going to reach to the back. And I guess maybe
Can we have transportation come up here and clear this question of the approximate location of the roundabout and how you think we might access the adjacent property and eventually his property?
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah.
The parcels in question are here. And
If you can draw a line on that beautiful map to show us where the property lines will be. So that's well, I mean, if you'll draw, outline the whole thing. Okay.
briefly, right-of-way required for the roundabout is not impacting either of these parcels. We're just talking about frontage off 9.
There was some discussion about this curb cut in the middle of the two properties. What's going on with that? Are we recommending that be closed at some point in time?
Yes.
Yes, is that what it was? The answer yes?
The answer was yes.
All right, so if you'll circle the curb cut that we're talking about, potentially asking them to close. And I would assume that we would only ask them to close that if we gave them alternate access.
Right here.
Or somewhere else.
Or back here.
Yeah.
Or back here.
So that we would make a condition of closing that curb cut if they had a second means of access was opened up.
Correct.
And only if.
Right. And condition number 4 of the resolution does ask for 10 additional feet of right-of-way.
Okay.
That gets us to 60 feet, or at least that side.
Thank you for that clarification. Other questions of council? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. This may be a little bit premature, but have there been discussions with the adjacent property owner about providing access to adjoining properties to the roundabout? That's a Rob Del Ross question.
The parcel that we're showing the fourth leg of the roundabout through is something that we identified as an impacted business from the very first public meeting on this project. Have we discussed with them connectivity to this adjacent parcel? No, we have not.
Okay, so until that, there's a possibility of that occurring, but if and when that occurs, then we will close the other driveway, but otherwise they'll continue to have access.
There is a possibility of that occurring. There is a possibility of that not occurring. We are keeping the option open.
Okay, and what I'm understanding is the residents who live back here really want that second curb cut.
Mm-hmm.
So to protect them, that curb cut will exist until such time as there's a secondary access out.
That's the way I understand the condition, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you. You may have a
Chair.
seat. Oh, Councilman Orleans has a question.
Actually, this might be more for Brad. Brad, how are we on timing on this as far as any deferrals?
Done.
None?
Not tonight or, well, tonight.
One last question for the applicant. You're showing a two-story condo building. Are those for sale condos?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And about what size are those?
1,200 square feet, 5 units.
1,200?
Yeah.
1,200
Yeah.
square?
1,200 square feet, 5 units.
Okay. Thank you.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Councilman Orleans.
All right, I'm going to take one more shot at this. Since there's no deferral and I got to vote yes or no tonight, my question comes back to, in trying to meet the intent of where we're going in the future and trying to get rid of parking up front with your condo building, I guess, and I'm not an expert on this, you guys, the engineers are, but I could see the parking going where your condo building is, that building moved up to the front. You're telling me that you looked at these options or you just didn't look at these options?
We looked at those options.
I'm sorry?
We looked at several options with that. And one of the concerns was from residents and also to move it up further. And I believe the water we needed back there, right? The water quality back there?
What really is driving it is the neighbors wanting an access.
Yeah. The neighbors really.
I didn't hear that.
The neighbors really wanted it that way. There's a lot of input from the neighbors. We've had numerous meetings with them, formally and informally, and that was one of the things we had. And one other plan, the parking a little differently, but they wanted it where it's at now.
They wanted the parking,
Neighbors on this.
they wanted the
this
parking
point?
up on Highway 9?
They wanted that additional access, and if we put a building there, then we wouldn't have that second access, and was one of the main driving forces for
What,
that.
the question I would like to ask, I think,
What we just looked at was there's going to be maybe possibly two or three other accesses at some point here, but, I'm sorry, Jared, go ahead.
I know we had a neighbor speak earlier. Does the neighbor who is still here, does he have any, can he tell us what the neighborhood thought about the issues raised by Councilmember Dippolito and Orleans, whether about the location of the condos and the location of that parking lot? Was that, can you recall that discussion?
Not in great detail, no.
If you have specific questions, I'll tell you what I recall, but I'm probably not going to be terribly helpful.
Thank you for trying. I'm not going to put you on the spot.
All right.
If you could speak to it, I wanted to ask you, but I will defer to what the property owner said. Other questions? Councilmember Diamond.
I'm sorry, can you remind me, it's 10 condo units?
No,
No.
5.
5. There's 7 on the plan, is that?
Okay.
Might be 7.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was,
7.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is it,
That was from the other plan before he acquired
so
the land
what
next
is
to us.
the number?
7.
7?
Yes.
Thank you. Other questions? Any council have any other questions before we open it up for public comment? We have a debate over here, so let's give them a chance. Does the council have any questions before we open it up for public comment? Seeing no hands up, let's hear, does anyone in the public have any questions, comments regarding this proposal? Come forward, please, if you'll give us your name and address.
My name is Stacy Zarpentine. I live at 1736 Wood Creek Trail. I use Highway 9 frequently, especially during rush hour. with the opening of putting in more condos and an office building, what do you see as the impact to more traffic and congestion on Highway 9 and the surrounding roads? And what does the city of Roswell plan to do to alleviate some of that traffic coming through there?
We plan to spend about $20 million.
Very good. Doing what?
Well, that is a very long answer. That includes
You can make it short.
Going from a suicide lane, 3 lanes to 4 lanes. It
Okay.
includes major improvements down at the river. So it is a long answer, but
All
it's
right.
about a $20 million answer.
Okay. Very good. That answers my question. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments from the floor? Any closing words from the applicant? Any further discussion from council before we entertain a motion? All right, Council Member Wynn not being here, it is open to any council member who wishes to make a motion. Council Member Diamond.
Yeah, they're all pointing down the road here. Okay, I would move that a resolution recommending that the City of Roswell Mayor and City Council approve the requested conditional use regarding CU 2014-02072 located on Atlanta Street. We don't have an address. With 5 conditions recommended by staff, changing number 5, where it says roundabout, it will say future vehicular access. And number 6, HBC will have final approval of landscaping and screening. And number 7, HOA covenants will include a restriction of no more than 15% rental units. I guess we can only do that on the condos because that's all that's on this property, right?
So 5 talks about, it eliminated the roundabout, it just said, it talks about vehicular access to the
Right.
road.
I mean, if some crazy things happen and we decide we don't want a roundabout, I don't want that
So
to.
so it changes in both places, roundabouts twice, so if
Right.
you'll, I got it. Thank you. We have a motion, do we have a second? Councilmember DiPolito.
Once again, I will second it, but I did want to clarify the 15% applies to the 2-story condominium building, I assume?
I think that's all we can talk about since the other one's a separate property.
Well, there's townhouses
Oh, right.
here.
Well, I'd like to do it on all livable units.
Mr. Davidson, is that how we do that? I just want to.
You can have them put it in the covenants. I mean, that's fine.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. So it's for all residential units.
Yes, I'm sorry.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Before we close this out, does the applicant understand the conditions? Any questions about the conditions?
No, I did not follow you.
If Councilmember Diamond, any specific, did you not follow any of them, or just 1 or 2 you didn't follow?
Just the last one, if you don't mind.
And the last one, is that having to do with the livable units and the limitations on 15%?
Yes, what we're trying to get to is that they are condos rather than apartments.
If you will read the condition a second time.
Okay, so HOA covenants will include a restriction of no more than 15% of units be rental or rental units.
We plan to sell it.
Right, and so you should be fine. It's
Oh,
just
okay.
kind of a
All right.
insurance.
Okay, we're on the same page.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion by council before we take a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That's Councilmember Eigelhart, Diamond, DiPolito. All opposed. Councilmember Orleans passes 3-1. Welcome twice to Roswell.
Thank you.
And I'll look forward to resting at the patio on the way up the hill.
Next item is CU 2014-03486 and CV 2014-03494, 1240 Alpharetta Street, Stein Investment Group. Mr. Townsend.
Yes, this is an existing storage site located on Alpharetta Highway, just across from the new elementary school. There's an existing U-Haul establishment business at this location. This is an aerial photograph showing the existing buildings. There are 2 existing buildings to remain that are approximately 110,000 square feet. The yellow portion shows the new structures that would be constructed on the proposed site plan. They're refacing the existing front of one of the buildings and constructing 3 new buildings, all for self-storage, mini storage. This application was reviewed by the Planning Commission. There was 4 variances at the time for the Planning Commission. They recommended approval of 3 of the variances and split 2 of the variances into 2 different locations. So 2 of the variances they did not recommend on. The 2 variances that they recommended denial dealt with the build-to zone requirement. If you go back to the site plan, you can see that one of the new buildings is pushed all the way to Alpharetta Highway. The one building that exists that they're refurbishing has some topographic constraints, and the applicant is requesting it just be refurbished and left back instead of brought forward to the build-to zone. One of the variances that Planning Commission didn't have a problem with was leaving the Strickland location building to remain as it does and not push that building to the street, because that would be back into the neighborhood into the Strickland location. So they did recommend that variance requested. Staff would recommend approval of the variance and approval with conditions that are included in your resolution before you. There were 10 conditions recommended, and there were the 4 variances that were recommended. So it gets kind of confusing as to which variances are you going to recommend, which variances you're going to not recommend. The simplest is to understand the build-to zone as well as the transparency on Alpharetta Highway with what they are proposing needs to be varied if you're going to have the improvement for the conditional use for the self-storage. If you have any questions at this time.
Council have any questions? Thank you. Mr. Townsend, would you walk us through the 3, well, I guess you explained the 1 variance that the Planning Commission recommended, the building along Strickland Road. Would you explain the rationale for what they recommended for items 1 and 3, variances 1 and 3?
The Planning Commission recommended the reduction in the amenity space because that's being reduced from 20% down to 20% to 13%. The build-to variance on Strickland is the one that they recommended, and the reduction of the 75% lot width requirement on the build-to zone on Alpharetta Highway.
All right, so they, under number 1, the reduction in the amenity space, they were okay with.
Right.
And so could you explain how does that make the amenity space contiguous?
The graphic I'm showing is showing the green, which is the landscaping area. We can split hairs of definition as to what is amenity space. What was requested is this area was enlarged. There was a complete row of parking adjacent to this location. Some of the parking was moved back here, and this area was enlarged as well as this area in this location. The I mentioned the shop front variance on Strickland.
Well, that,
Okay.
I still don't understand why there's a reduction in the amenity space. We have a hardship for variances, right? Where's the hardship and why are we going from 20 to 13?
I think the applicant will have to answer that.
So you don't know of a hardship?
The hardship is related to, you want the piece of property to redevelop, and is this the redevelopment that you want? If it's not, then they don't have a hardship.
So there's no actual hardship, it's just, do we want the project?
Do you want redevelopment dealing with improvement to this location or not?
Okay, well, you answered my question.
Okay.
Oh, and I'm sorry, I interrupted you. So on variance number 3 that was requested, would you explain that?
The reduction of the 75% lot width requirement in the build to zone. When we have a build to zone in this location, the lot coverage should be at least 75%. If we leave the building back at this location, this is the only building that's actually making that lot coverage up there. So this part needs to be varied.
And the build to zone in shop front at this location is what distance?
5 to 10.
So it's a maximum of 10?
Maximum of 10, right.
And they're showing how much?
This location, I believe it's something like 70, 75.
It's 70 feet from the property line to the face of the building?
Yes.
And our requirement is a 10 maximum?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
For future reference, this is a great picture, because I've been meaning to ask.
I did this afternoon, about 5 minutes.
Great.
I should have included it. Should have
I've been
included
meaning to
it.
ask if we could ever get what is each thing, like
Right.
particularly outdoor amenity space and things in colors, that would be helpful, or at least
Yes.
even determine what they are. So this
Yeah.
is great. So thank you for that. But I did want to clarify on outdoor amenity. Oh, let me one other thing. Yeah, I think since we talked about the build to zone, this is that one area that has a topography right off that road, right? So it's kind of a
Right.
steep thing. So I can actually agree with that in one case here. But the issue with the green, are we saying then that this tiny little strip over behind that building and then one filled in parking space is an amenity space?
I just identified them as landscaping. I think we have some definitional issues as to what it gets included in outdoor amenity space and is not included in outdoor amenity space. And I think that's some of the conversations we've had at work session and will continue to have with even discussion tonight. In the clearest definition, that is not outdoor amenity space. That's back behind the building. That's just a landscape strip.
That's my point.
This is landscape strip back here. So are you going to clump them together? It's going to be our future discussion actually from tonight
Right.
in dealing with how we handle it.
Right, and I understand that, and I guess that's my point.
Right.
is that it's not amenity space,
No.
in my opinion, so.
Okay, so those two strips you just pointed out, you
Are
say
land-
you're including them in the,
I've included them as landscaping.
which is what, 13% again?
I think on this plan is overall 13% correct.
And why are you including those two strips into that?
I included anything that was green.
Okay, couple questions. On the 75% variance that they're asking for, the one building, the new building that's going to be up to the street, one, it could be wider to increase that percentage a little bit more if we're trying to give on the other building because they feel that there is some hardships over there and understand the topo. So that could be wider to reduce that variance there. I guess another question is just the storage building, what's it going to look like? And I guess this is more for the applicant. What will it look like from the street? I mean, we're trying to make it street friendly, pedestrian friendly, so I guess it's going to be the end of a storage building, so is it just going to be a brick wall? Next one is in the front where they're foregoing the parking spaces and widening the green space. I guess to get the variance of not moving the building up to the street, I would like to see the green space go all the way across and the rest of those parking spaces in the front to make it again more pedestrian friendly and inviting. You know, I don't know, maybe even some steps coming down into the front of the building and the landscaping. And if I guess if we're calling this amenity space over on Strickland Road, I guess I would like to ask the applicant if they can clean up their gate. They're not listening, but if they could clean up the cars and stuff and trucks that are sitting outside the gate on Strickland, I'm assuming it belongs to them. So that might be another issue at another time that we need to have them clean up. If that's going to be in an amenity space, those trucks are sitting out there in front of the closed gate. And the indication was they're getting rid of the auto repair in the back of the main building. Is the other building that used to house the motorcycle sales in the far back being torn down then as well? I'm assuming the way it looks on this.
Yes, that's my understanding.
I think that's all I have. Any other questions?
I know the applicant has some elevations and drawings that they'll be able to at least represent some graphically how it would look.
Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. I guess as Councilman Orleans was talking, I was thinking about what he was saying about making some of these buildings wider, and it occurred to me, I realize we have some topo issues, but couldn't we push a portion of the I guess the largest building in the middle there, take that purple area and push that, a portion of it up toward the street, so that when you come in off the street, you have buildings on either side, if that makes any sense. And then put parking behind the building. So you can have parking as you're coming in, you have parking behind it, you get at least half of that building up closer to the street, and then as you go up, or you head south on Alpharetta Highway, and the topography drops, that becomes the backside of the center, which I think, to me, would be much more palatable than pushing the whole thing back from the street. So it's kind of a comment and a question, have we looked at anything in that respect? Then my other question is, we've got a lot of gray here, and I'm not seeing much green in here or anything in terms of buffers, screening. It just looks like we're going to have a lot of trucks and not much improvement to the overall property other than dressing up some of the buildings. So I would ask the applicant to discuss that.
Does the council have any other questions for staff at this time? This time we'll hear from the applicant if they've come forward.
Let's see how I would do that. Start. Good evening. My name is Jessica Hill. I'm at the law firm of Morris, Manning & Martin. I'm here representing the applicant, and I have standing with me Jason Stein, who is with the Stein Investment Group, the applicant. As indicated, we're asking for a conditional use permit and 4 concurrent variances. There is storage on the property. It's been there since the mid-90s when it was approved in the existing 4-story building. The picture that I'm showing you here is what the property looks like currently from Alpharetta Street facing the property. You can see the existing building, which will be renovated, and then you can see where the U-Haul trucks are currently parked, where the new building will go. This is just an additional view on Alpharetta Highway, again, showing the U-Haul trucks and the existing building. And then just one more orientation. This is the view from Strickland Road. There are single-family residences immediately across the street. So this being the current entrance, and then this being the view looking up Strickland at the existing self-storage building. But the thought is keeping the buildings away from the single-family residential would be preferable, particularly when you look at the prior 94 conditions. There was definitely an interest in keeping those buildings back. Okay. So here's our site plan. It has gone through a variety of changes since we first filed the application. Currently, there are 26 parking spaces in front of the building. We're proposing to have 7. We've staged it down each meeting that we go to. We haven't had a lot of community input, quite frankly. We've only had input from the Design Review Board, from the Planning Commission, from staff. So it's good to be here in front of you guys today. Again, the project has currently 7 parking spaces out front. That's the minimum that we think is necessary to serve what is going to be not only the office for the storage facility, but there's also the potential for a small commercial component in that frontage as well, and we have some pictures of what that will look like. But the project, as most self-storage facilities are, is gated. There are going to be gates in this location, back here in this location, and then up on Strickland as well. Again, that's for security purposes. It prevents cut-through traffic. But we do need to have some limited number of spaces outside of those gates for customer service. One interesting thing that we have done since the Planning Commission meeting is there was some discussion about, well, if you have parking spaces up front, you're just going to have U-Haul trucks parked up front. That's not the intent. When we first filed the application, we didn't have this new building up on Alpharetta Street. We had just a big open space, like what's there right now, which is a big parking lot. Instead, trying to meet the intent of the UDC, we put a building there. We brought it up to the street. We're agreeable, as staff has recommended, to making it storefront on Alpharetta Street, and we're amenable to making it storefront around the side to some agreeable distance, and I'll get into that in a second. But it's not going to look like a big concrete storage facility. We have provided a space along the side of the existing building for the U-Haul truck return. It is not in front of the building, and Jason's pointing to it for me. It is not in front of the building, it's on the side of the building, and the thought is when somebody returns their truck, they have a designated place to go, put their truck, and then it can be moved into the back, where the applicant proposes to have the actual storage of the U-Haul trucks. Now, one thing I will add to that, my client's business is not the same as the current operator. He's under contract to purchase the business. It's not as U-Haul centric as the current business, so they don't foresee the need to have 20, 30 U-Haul trucks parked out front. It is an amenity to the business, but it is not the core of their business. So they don't foresee any issues with having the U-Hauls somewhat hidden in the back, which also accounts for the parking area that's being left in the back. Getting to what the facility will look like, this is the view from Alpharetta Street. This is the new building that is up on the street. You can see it has a storefront feel. We have added, and this will become clear in the next picture, added a little park area where we previously and currently have parking. One of the suggestions made at the DRB meeting was it would be great if there were some stairs to get down into the facility from the street, and we have added those. Those are shown on the site plan. So the thought is you could come, sit here, have your lunch. I don't know how many people go to a storage facility to have lunch, but it's certainly possible. Maybe, I don't know if they have outdoor seating at Dairy Queen, but they could come here. But again, we thought it'd be a nice amenity space, and it does add to our outdoor amenity. And then here is just one more look from Alpharetta Street. This one actually shows the monument sign, which is the subject of one of the conditions, which again I'll get into in a second. There's an existing monument sign on the property, which I think this one shows it. Yeah, it's a real big monument sign. We would like to have a monument sign. They're not currently allowed by your UDC. What we would like to do is pare down the existing sign into something smaller and more street friendly. There are topographic issues on this site, which again I will continue to get into, but as you can actually probably see a little bit from the building or from this picture here. But we would like to have an opportunity to have some signage up on the street, and we'll discuss that in the conditions. This is just one more view showing the comparison of the Alpharetta Street frontage to what's there now, which I think is pretty compelling. All right, now on to the variances. I know there were several questions about the variances we're asking for, so I'm going to start, actually, I'll start with this one. This is the variance about why can we not bring the building up to the street. The current building is 70 feet and change from the property line. Again, we're building the new building at the build-to zone, but this drawing here, the site section, shows the fact that from the property corner to the corner of the building, there's an 8-foot drop. From the building corner to the other building corner, it's like 6.5 feet to 2 feet. So it's quite a little slant, as you can see here, and it shows where the person would be standing in the actual building versus where they're standing on the sidewalk. The same issue, just to complicate matters, same issue is present on the site. This shows if you're standing in the building looking up at the street. It shows what happens if you were to move the existing building up to the street. You would be downstairs. You would be below looking up, basically putting your chin on the sidewalk depending on how tall you are. We've looked at bringing the building up to the street. We've certainly looked at bringing a portion of the building up to the street. There are some other considerations with the site, which actually I'm going to go back to the site plan. There we go. One of the first things that was mentioned to us when we met with staff about this project was you have 2 curb cuts on Alpharetta Street and one of them needs to go away. And we said, okay. That's okay. We took away the curb cut here, which provided our access around that building, but that makes the front vehicular access in front of the building on Alpharetta Street critically important because you can't get around the building otherwise. If we were to bring the building up to the street, we would then have dead space on this end of the property. So again, that's another reason why we would prefer not to bring the building up to the street, in addition to the topography making it pretty much physically impossible. If we were building a brand new building, we would make it so that the building would go up to the street. We could figure out a way, but we're renovating an existing building. It has storage units in it that are going to be renovated for the project. So, again, if we were starting from scratch, but we were trying to do whatever we can to dress up the building and make it at least feel like we're bringing the street to the building in some aspect with bringing the amenity space in the front. Let's see. The outdoor amenity space, we'll talk about that. There is a stream buffer in the rear of the site. I'm going to show, we have our own little exhibit that shows some of the areas we've counted in our amenity space, which are not all necessarily the same as the ones that Mr. Townsend had. We have a stream buffer back here, which we can include. It's 3/4 of an acre. It would add 12% to our amenity space. We are, per staff's conditions, amenable to putting in the trail and restoring the creek as requested by staff. Removing the existing impervious in there, we're fine with doing all of that. But we don't get to count that area for anything except to have a nice trail in the back that, again, I'm not sure who in a storage facility is going to go walking back there, but be that as it may. So the hardship for us is that we have this large area that we can't count, and due to the nature of the use, the outdoor amenity area is really not going to be used all that much. Let's see. We have the build-to zone area, which again, I think those are really tied with the fact that if we move the building up to the street, if we can't move the building up to the street, then we can't meet the build to 75%. There's not a way to meet that percentage if we can't bring the building up to the street.
In one grade, you could be down to grade in 20 feet. So you could pretty easily move the building up to within 20 feet and be right at grade. Now, you wouldn't have a drive in front of it. You'd have to figure out a way to put the drive around it. But one of the thoughts I had suggested moving a portion of the building up closest to the drive, right up along the street, but you could take that whole building modification and just do an additional small building 20 feet off the street and run the drive behind it. And that would help you get your circulation, and that would get a building up on the street, and you would have, in the worst case scenario, you'd be 6 feet below grade, and you could actually slope down there. You wouldn't even need a retaining wall. So I think you could actually fairly easily get there and get the buildings up pretty close to the street. You couldn't understand, to get within 10 feet, you'd have to have a retaining wall, and you'd have probably 3 feet below the grade. So I'm not sure that makes a whole lot of sense. But I'd much rather see a variance to get within 20 feet and figure that out rather than to be back 70 feet, because I just don't think it's necessary.
So the challenge, so we went through that exercise, and I agree with you, went through the same thought process. The building up on the street it's good visibility. I mean, there's nothing, inherently that we wouldn't want to do about that. The issues with circulation, there's a couple of things. One is you have this big building here that can't move, right? And it is what it is in terms of its finished floor elevation. This drops about from a little over 6 feet to a little under 2 feet here. So we've got it 4.5 to 5 feet going this way. So what happens is this building, which isn't that wide, has to step maybe 2 or 3 times inside of it. So inside of our space, we have to step the building in order to follow the grade, either on the front or the back.
Because my point is you don't have to follow the grade, you just slope down off the street.
Well, we'd have to follow it in the back at least to have access to it. Because we wouldn't have any access to the building. You know, this would be so much higher than our grade.
But your grade can slope down from the street. So you would be at 34, I think your grade is, all around the building.
That's right. So to travel from here to here, you know, because this is 34.
Right. So I guess if you look at your drive lane, you have your building, then you have a drive lane, a two-way drive lane, then you have a curb where your plaza area is.
Mm-hmm.
You could easily slope up. That's probably further than 20 feet, but you could easily slope up 6 feet in that distance. That's my point. So you could maintain that grade of 34 and slope up to Alpharetta Highway. You just couldn't do it in the 10 feet. You could do it in 20 feet.
Okay.
But the difference is your drive lane. You essentially swap your drive lane and your what you're calling your building modification.
Right.
So you'd have a row of shops literally right up on the street.
If I can address that, I'm David Blumenthal with Travis Pruitt and Associates. We're the civil engineer for the project. If we were to do that, I mean, we can't slope right down to the edge of the building. We still need to have the building set further back from the slope. Otherwise, we're pushing any stormwater runoff or drainage that falls into that area, essentially trapping it against the side of the building.
Okay, so
having
put
a
in
drive
1 foot,
aisle
put in
or
a
something.
12-inch retaining wall. Solves your problem. It's not a big wall. It's, little stack stone and you're done.
Other questions of council? Actually, I thought the solution of the amenity space in front of the building was a good way to compromise here, recognizing the grade change. The parking lots on that front don't bother me much because actually, given the grade change, they almost disappear. You look over the top of those cars and see the building. So it's actually a good way to hide the cars. I'm most interested in what no one else seems to be interested in, and that is the creek. And what may not be classified as an amenity space by our zoning ordinances, but what I believe is the most environmentally sensitive part of the property, which is that property along the creek. So could y'all tell me what you talked about plans are on that rear portion, which is undeveloped, and you talked about restoration of the creek, and that's what concerns me the most. So you're smiling, so I'm glad that you're positive on this.
Yes, well, we are amenable to following whatever staff's conditions are as far as the restoring and revegetation of the stream buffer. There's currently impervious surface within the buffer. There's parking within the buffer, so that will be removed. There's also a requirement, I believe, to have a trail. Yes, a 10-foot wide trail along the creek, which initially we were told we didn't have to do, but it's appeared in the conditions, which is fine. I don't know if you want to add anything specific about the actual revegetation.
I mean, I would just say at this point also that, the 25-foot area, the state sanctioned buffer is naturally vegetated through there. It's the, the next 75 feet, the city portion. It's a grass lot. I think they were doing wood chipping back there, and the plan would be to, return that to a more naturally vegetated and sustainable state. Additionally, the impervious area encroaches into the 150-foot impervious setback, and we would be removing it from that setback area, and also, restoring that area to a more natural condition as well.
Is the restoration of the stream and the green space, and although there's not a lot of green space elsewhere, this is a fairly substantial piece of green space, which I think will help the environment, and I'm not sure we'll ever get a trail back there, but if Rich and I are successful, we'd like to see a trail along all of our creeks. And so there's do we get an easement along with this 10-foot trail, potentially to connect it to other trails? Is that part of this?
You can include that as...
We could, how would y'all feel about a trail easement back there?
That would be fine. Where?
Well, in this, to sort of, if one day we could connect this 10-foot trail to something else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we talked about it, actually, at one point, the idea was eventually it would connect the other trails on either side of our property.
So I'd ask council to consider, if they pass this, to consider an easement. And again, I believe that that's a great potential for improving the environment back there, and one day perhaps getting a trail that goes somewhere else. And even if there is never a trail there, the neighborhood kids will enjoy that green space, as I did when I was a boy.
Mine would.
Other questions or comments from council? Councilmember Eichelhardt.
One more on that whole parking area. Is that going to be for U-Haul vehicles? Sorry, I should say behind the gates, in the big open space, actually to your left, in front of the new one-story building, that whole area there. Is that
this here?
Yes.
This would be for, we'll have some U-Haul parks back here, and also any kind of vehicle storage for a customer.
Because I guess I haven't compared the parking requirements, but it just seems like that's an awful lot of space that you really probably don't need. And where I'm going with that is, does that not allow some of the open amenity options to take in some of that space?
Just to add some green space back here?
Basically, yeah.
Okay. It is a lot of space.
I should have been more specific and just said that, shouldn't I?
I mean, it is a lot of space. This was an old Chevrolet car dealership at one point, which is the genesis of all that
Right.
parking field, right?
Because I really appreciate all the work that you're doing to try and make it better, and you definitely are. But
yeah,
that's one of the sticking points, and it seemed like that's an open area to be able to do something with.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would be open to adding some additional green space there. Maybe we could, I don't know, David, maybe we can kind of connect these areas through here. I'm not sure.
And as you may well know, we're having the debate as to what does count as outdoor
Right.
amenity, and whether it actually is an amenity or whether it's just covering, if we don't have as much building space on every property. So, but as it stands, it is not intended to be, as you know, that's why there's a variance in there, but just, every little piece of green everywhere.
Right.
So that it would be something more substantial than just a strip, but I think there is some room there to maybe do something.
And it's worth noting that if we did count this, or could count this, would be 25% amenity area.
Brad, have you got an aerial of this property? I'm just curious what's on the property immediately north of the area which Councilmember Eichelhardt was talking about.
This property to the north? I think it's
Lee Daly Longino.
Is it Five Brothers Auto?
Yeah.
Five Brothers Auto?
So Dairy Queen, there's a vacant building, then it's the
I see.
auto guy. Was it
Five Brothers.
Honest Auto, and then Five Brothers.
Good to know. Thank you. Other questions the council may have? Let's see if there's anyone in the audience who has any questions or comments. Does anyone in the public have any questions or comments regarding this project? Any closing words? I think Councilmember Eichelhardt's in a let's make a deal mode.
Well, I mean, I think you can tell we're happy to work with whatever the desires are, within the constraints of what we can do. We're certainly trying to make a property that's, we feel like, which is why we like it, it's kind of sort of in the center of this corridor between the downtown Roswell and all the way up to Holcomb Bridge, trying to make something look a lot nicer than it does today. So while the exercises that we've gone through haven't shown that we can push the building up to the street, just because of the topography there on the south side, I think sort of bringing that street to the building hopefully accomplishes what the UDC is trying to do, which is no parking fields between buildings and streets, and trying to work with the existing footprint of what we have. And I think what's really going to help this corridor as well is just removing all these U-Haul trailers that are there 24/7, propane tank, all that stuff. I mean, I think that's ultimately going to be a nice change.
Well, let's see if we can entertain a motion and then see if, yes, go ahead.
If I may just add to my client's comments, there was one thing I did miss about the conditions, which I want to make sure before you guys start making motions are understood. We are amenable to the staff's recommended conditions with 2 exceptions. Number 9 says the existing ground sign shall be removed. I alluded to that early on in my presentation. We don't want to keep the existing monument sign, but we can't build a new one. So we have asked for direction on whether we could move and somehow renovate the existing sign to make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing.
So would you be acceptable to say a monument sign consistent with the elevation shown?
That would be wonderful. And the second is something that came out of the Planning Commission on number 10. The staff's condition requires that the new building on Alpharetta Street be storefront on Alpharetta Street and also on both sides. The discussion at the Planning Commission was those are really long sides, and most retail or commercial buildings don't have storefront interior to the building or interior to another property. We have Dairy Queen next to us with a drive-through, and it's not accessible. So having storefront all the way down the back is going to create a glass tower area. Yeah. So the discussion that we had, and I think the Planning Commission's recommendation was that we would do storefront on either side back to the gate, which at the time the gate was at 70 feet. So we would propose to do the same amount of storefront back 70 feet from the property line.
Basically, the storefront, it wraps the building like this.
Right. So from the street, you would see storefront, but as you're walking between the buildings, you wouldn't necessarily see storefront, which again would be, I think, consistent with most commercial properties.
We have issues with the sign.
Oh. Darn.
And Mr. City Attorney, if you could explain the issues with a monument sign.
Shopfront doesn't allow a monument sign, so.
The applicant's attorney suggested that somehow we grandfather in the existing monument sign and allow that to be improved. Is that a possibility?
The way we allow improvements is basically exchange the panels, but there's.
I could see a lot of improvements could be made to this.
But for a shop front,
I'm not talking
allowed.
Well, let's say, I understand a sign is not allowed for a shop front, but could they renovate the existing sort of pylon monument sign to make it more consistent with the existing monument sign?
Why
I
don't
think
they
that
put-
sign's in the middle of their building.
Why don't they put signs on the new building that is adjacent to the street?
We're looking for a solution here.
What's wrong with the way you're showing the monument sign on this picture?
Shopfront does not allow ground signs. Shopfront as a designation does not allow ground signs.
Oh, on the UDC shop front.
Correct.
Councilman Dippolito.
I think the nature of our problem is that under shop front, the buildings are supposed to be on the street, and therefore you don't have a monument sign. So my recommendation, again, is to move the building up to the street. Then we won't have to worry about the sign. And in all seriousness, I do honestly believe we could get within 20 feet. You could have a nice sidewalk and a landscape area out front, and I would even recommend pulling back the new self-storage building that's closest to Dairy Queen, slide that back 20 feet, make the whole thing consistent. And then you'd be right up on the street and you wouldn't need a monument sign.
Well, here's where we are, moving buildings, building new buildings. We seem to have a lot of remaining issues. I'm sensing that there is a spirit of compromise here, but also it's difficult to work out a compromise of this nature from the dais. So does staff believe further discussions, and I hate deferring things, might be productive?
Is there any further comments from the council at this point?
I had one last question. I guess it may actually be more of a comment. I had discussed earlier about the lack of buffers, which right now are really not a big deal with the surrounding uses, because the surrounding uses are very industrial feeling. But I think having landscaping around the perimeter would be important, and I also think having landscaping to screen off some of the truck parking in the back would also be important. I think Councilmember Eigelhart was talking about making some amenity space, but I'm actually, I agree with him, and I'm actually more concerned about screening some of those trucks, because one of the issues we have right now is there's just this mass of trucks, and it's nothing against U-Haul, there's just a lot of trucks and trailers right up on the street. So to the extent we can have nice buildings with good landscaping, and you know the trucks are there, but they're not necessarily in your face, I think that'd be a huge improvement.
Well, we have two possibilities here, Council. We can try to structure a motion which brings everybody together, or we can move to defer and try to work something else out, or we can move to deny. Councilman Eigelhart.
I would suggest you defer, because I think there are a lot of different thoughts, and however you come up with those, we may not even agree up here. But two things I want to say is, one, I really appreciate your hard work on this, because I think you have the right attitude and you're trying to do the right thing. And unfortunately, you're caught a little bit in where we are in the situation. And we have to be careful, I think, for the other things that we're going for in the future. And if we just throw it, in my opinion, if we throw it all out and say, well, it's okay on this one, then the next 10 that come along, we're in a bad situation. So we have to be careful to apply what we can here. So that was my comment to Brad, is what do we do from forward? So that's what I think, is that we need to try and stick to that as much as possible, but to try and work with them as much as possible. So,
Councilmember Orleans.
I'd have to say that I was pretty skeptical coming into tonight, but I do appreciate the fact that we're getting a new owner, and your whole attitude and thought process is much better. So I think we're trying to work with you. So I would also think that maybe deferral might be the best avenue, and see what you can work out. I mean, if you can't, you can't, but take another look at it and consider some of the thoughts that we're kicking around tonight. So I think that might be the best avenue to go right now as well.
So give me some relief. Make a motion to defer.
So moved.
Motion to defer by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Eigelhart.
What date?
January 12th?
Are we going to have enough time?
Yeah, next normal meeting, if that's good with them.
January 12th.
The applicants.
Before we take a vote, does the council have any additional comments to perhaps let folks know what they would like to see? Councilmember Diamond.
Thank you, sir. I do think, David and I talked last week about how to make the monument sign work, and it doesn't sound like we have a lot of option that doesn't take a lot of time. But I'm not sure in the big picture that really serves us. I think the amenity space is less an issue than getting rid of some of the impervious, because I'm like, I don't think people are going to go sun themselves in the back of a storage place. But if we can, any place you can take out impervious surface, that's always a good thing. I appreciate losing the curb cut. I appreciate all the improvements you guys are making, and if the option is there and that works, great. If it's not, I am willing to look at it when it comes back either way.
Any additional comments before we take a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That's unanimous. That's deferred until the 10th. We're going to take a 10-minute break. 12th. 10-minute break.
Thank you.
We have to initiate when we're off. So technically, we either initiate here when we get back, which is too late, or we can try and do it. If we can get plans on the 29th.
next item?
Thank you. Next item is RC 2014-03620, Metropolitan River Protection Act Certificate, Willio Trail, Phase 4. Mr. Townsend.
This is a city project for a MERPA certification for a boardwalk pedestrian trail along the Chattahoochee River. This is Phase 4. This is the location for the, we just need City Council to approve the certification. It's been found consistent.
Councilmember Diamond to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. We have been working on this project for how long, Recreation Department?
10 years.
10 years. Who says the federal government's slow? 10 or 13 years. It's at least 10.
It took Morgan Rogers to make it happen. How about that?
And this is a project with no significant impact. Took us 10 years. Can you imagine what would have happened if it had been significant impact? How long it might have taken?
All in favor?
All in favor?
We have to have public.
Public comment. Does anybody want to comment?
The reason I say that is because that's the only reason
Come forward and ask your question, please.
Who is the, is the question, who is the engineer?
Stacy's Arpentine.
If you'll give us your name and address, please. for the
Stacy's
record.
Arpentine, 1736 Wood Creek Trail. I just want to know who did the study, the environmental study around the impact?
The city hired the local firm AEC Engineering, and they provided the plans and the study and the information to
Who was
the
it again?
AEC.
AEC. All right, thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to comment or have any questions? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Next item is initiation of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code for outdoor amenity space. Mr. Townsend.
This has been discussed at a workshop. We are here this evening to initiate the text amendment to start the formal discussion. The areas in red was provided at the committee meeting. We did discuss adding sidewalks and walkways this into the outdoor amenity space definition, dealing with the calculation for the location. This was staff's recommendations at the time, dealing with the individual building types and dealing with the common open space, the landscape open space, and the outdoor amenity space, and adjusting the definitions, percentage requirements, dealing with the 20% requirement, and moving it into 10% and 15% in the appropriate categories. This is just for initiation. It will come back to council for formal adoption after Planning Commission review and recommendation.
So there will be a public hearing before the Planning Commission.
Correct.
Opportunity for people to be heard then, and then there will be
Two readings.
of the ordinance, and this will be coming back to committee also with council.
It will be not be coming back to committee unless council wants it to, but it
It'll
would
be
come.
probably coming back to committee.
Okay. This will be coming back to committee for further discussion if it is initiated.
It will be on the agenda to ask if there's any further discussion before it comes to the council. If there's no further discussion, it will not be discussed.
Okay.
But I will place it on the committee
Okay.
to make sure if there's any further discussion, we smoke it out at committee.
That'll.
Councilmember Aguilar.
That actually was going to be my question, because I have issues with as it is, and I don't want to go through a whole process before it comes back to us. So if we're going to discuss it in committee, I won't rail on it too much right now. I'm okay with the initiation. I had
It will be on the calendar after, I'd like to see it go to Planning Commission for their comments.
All right, so I should give, well, I'll wait then.
But once it goes to Planning Commission and they have their comments, I'd like to see it come to committee before it goes to the first reading.
That would likely be the January or February committee then.
Okay. Well, then
To come back to you.
I would like to make some comments. I'll wait till the appropriate time.
Okay.
Other questions or comments before we entertain a motion? Councilman Orleans.
Ed, can you kind of refresh my memory why on your chart here, 6-11, or Z611, which would be the next page, would be past this. Office and commercial zoning districts chart you've got there. Like this.
That was in the backup material to show what the prior zoning had as just a landscape requirement and did not have even an outdoor amenity space.
Okay, this one back in before
That-
UDC.
Right. That was,
Okay,
that was providing backup material as to what initiated and how we've migrated from just a landscaping requirement to three other requirements.
Okay.
Okay.
Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend, a couple questions about some of the text under the landscaped open space. It says a required neighborhood compatibility and/or stream buffer is considered part of this definition. Then it says a required state stream buffer is not considered part of this definition. So what is the difference between a neighborhood stream buffer and a state stream buffer?
The state requirement is the 25-foot requirement. The city's stream buffer requirement is the 50s and 75s and 100 and 150s. So we're making it, if it is a city requirement and we're requirement of the property, we can include it as the calculation.
Okay, I would suggest we clarify that and say a neighborhood compatibility buffer and/or a city stream buffer.
Okay.
Just to separate it, because it's a little confusing the way it's worded.
Okay.
The other question I had for you is actually similar to that, and if you go to outdoor amenity space, item B6, it says a required neighborhood compatibility and/or stream buffer is considered outdoor amenity space. So is the buffer considered outdoor amenity space, or is it considered landscape open space?
We're included in both. If the way it's being initiated, it's in both.
Why?
The simple answer to why relates to get to a 20% calculation. That's where everyone is having the difficulty because we don't include enough names or definition types in that. So in some of the criteria where we have larger landscape area requirements and smaller outdoor amenity space, they have to have something to grab to include in that definition that will be identified as that percentage.
So it can't be both, but it can be one or the other depending on the situation?
Depending on the situation, they'll probably include it in one or the other.
Okay. I still have questions about that, but I'll let that go for now. I just wanted to point out that it looked like we had it in both places. But so you can't count it as both things. You have to count it as one or the other.
One or the other.
Okay. Then my last question or comment was under 5A, where it says ground level common area facilities such as sidewalks and walkways. I think we want to be careful with that, and we talked a little bit about this at the committee meeting, where you don't want just a typical sidewalk that you have to have that's next to a building count as amenity space. But if you put in sidewalks that are above and beyond that required by code, or if you put in a multi-use trail instead of a 5-foot sidewalk.
Right.
I'm not exactly sure how you word it. Maybe you just say beyond that required by code.
Okay.
I'm fine with those areas being amenity space, but if it's something you have to do anyway to get into the building, or you have to do just as part of the building code, is it truly amenity space? And the answer is going to be it depends. You know, if it's a sidewalk on the back of the building, that's essentially a sidewalk for
fire access,
or a service car.
Service road.
I mean, it's clearly not amenity space.
Right.
So I'd like to see how we can word that to try to fine tune that a little bit.
We can work on that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Eichelhart.
I guess this actually is the appropriate time to make comments then about some of the specific elements. And I'm okay with the charts and the numbers. I think some of those make sense. so I'm okay with that. But I have, as I said during the committee, I have problems with some of the changes that we're making themselves. Because to me, the intention was, as I said earlier, to call something an outdoor amenity space when it's behind a gate at the very back of a storage unit just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right.
But the intention of that initially was to not cover the whole place with some kind of impervious surface or building. And all along we said that, well, you can't don't worry about a 75% building coverage because you can't actually do that because we have all these other requirements in order to keep you from doing that. But then the first thing we do is start chipping away at that, and we're using examples that are, I think, dubious examples of how this doesn't apply. It's a problem in a couple of minor projects, and to change everything based on that, I think, is the wrong approach. We haven't even hardly started, and we're already making that major change to me. So instead of saying all these things now, you have to A, B, C, and D, well, let's take out C, and we'll reduce B, and don't worry about A, maybe A. And I just think that's the wrong approach this early on. There are some instances where, yes, we have to figure out something on some specific properties, but I think it's a bad precedent at this stage, and also just bad operation to change this so much when we haven't even gotten started. So to add or allow the neighborhood compatibility buffer to be part of that totally goes against what I think the initial intention was. Required state stream buffer, I think maybe, because that's something that we're saying that it's not, so I'm okay with that. Then when you start moving into the outdoor, or excuse me, the unenclosed, it no longer has to be unenclosed. So I think that opens up a lot of bad opportunities. And then we add other than rooftop area, and we saw from the one that was a couple weeks ago, the Canton Street or Woodstock, whatever that is. It's a rooftop area, but it's just on top of a building. It's not really an outdoor amenity space for anybody else. Nobody else is going up there. So it doesn't do the intention, meet the intention that we initially had. So I think we are totally changing what the desire is, or what the desire was, at least for me, maybe not for others. And it's a bait and switch for what we had said we were going to do, and now what we're now moving forward, now that things are starting to hit the ground. So I oppose that part. I'm okay with the charts and the numbers, but I strongly oppose the word changes.
Councilmember Diamond.
I understand where Councilmember Arielhart is coming from. I think where the difference lies is in those charts and the flexibility, depending on where it is. Because I do think there's a lot of places that we knew at the time that we were going to have to address that are teeny tiny properties that are right now totally impervious, and we've got to find a way to make them better or allow them to be better without regulating them out of existence. So I understand. I think the charts maybe give us the guidelines to get to the wording so that we can have that flexibility, but that's where, I guess the eternal question is, how do we get the flexibility without selling out what we're looking for? And when legal figures out how to just say, we want the good stuff, I'm all there. But in the meantime, we've just got to keep chipping away at a definition, and I think we're heading in the right direction, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Just a suggestion, I would think that council be given the flexibility when there is a hardship shown to grant a variance from the amenity space requirements, and that may be one way to get you there when there is a unique situation. So something for our legal department to think about. Any other questions before we entertain a motion? Councilmember DiPolito.
I guess just to clarify what you were just saying, we have that ability to do that now, right? Couldn't we just vary it now? For a
So we
hardship?
do have a right to grant a variance.
So we wouldn't need to change this at all if we wanted to keep it and just
What did you say,
vary it.
Mr. Davidson, if you'll give us.
The variances go to BZA unless there's related to a rezoning or a conditional use.
So this would never come, if somebody wanted to vary the amenity space, it wouldn't have to come to council?
The current process has them going to BZA for relief of the outdoor amenity space if they do not require a rezoning or a conditional use that is processed concurrently to council. So no, they would not come to you. That's why the daycare center and Ruse went to BZA.
I think we need to create a text amendment to solve that.
Do we have a motion to initiate the text amendment? Motion by Councilmember Orleans. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Orleans is in favor. Diamond, DiPolito are in favor. All opposed. Eaglehart's opposed. Passes 3-1.
Next item is approval of a text amendment to chapters 5 and 9 of the Unified Development Code regarding boutique hotels. This is the first reading.
This actually was initiated by Roswell, Inc. in discussing the number of rooms allowed within a boutique hotel. It was discussed at committee. The wording that's brought before you allows for a second category of boutique hotel, which requires a conditional approval in the DX and the DS category, and the hotel would have 31 to 25 rooms, 125 rooms.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Orleans.
I thought, Brad, back when we discussed it in committee, and it's been a while now, that we had talked about taking that 125 down to 100.
That has been brought up numerous times, but there's been no clear direction to actually what number is going to land. So this is your first reading, and it is your choice as to where that number lands.
Councilmember Diamond.
I will just throw in that having spent some time researching this, I do think 125 is the right number. I think in the districts where it is, the HPC has control over what that looks like, how that feels, and to make sure it doesn't have the monster hotel feel as opposed to the look that I think we're looking for.
Any other questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. I guess also to point out it's conditional, so it needs our approval anyway. From a question standpoint, under the use table, we have hotel motel, which in parentheses says more than 30 rooms. I'm not sure how you distinguish between a hotel motel and a boutique hotel. Do we have those defined, or do we need to change how that reads in the table?
The definitions are in chapter 9, 956. We added, I think, the same definition in the boutique hotel that said it had to be entry individual rooms via a central lobby. And since it's only being conditional in the 2 downtown districts, the boutique hotel as a category won't be in any of the other shop or community or commercial heavy or commercial mixed use.
Okay, so that wouldn't. All right. I guess my question is, I hear what you're saying. My question is, if we have a boutique hotel that's more than 30 rooms, and we have a hotel motel more than 30 rooms, one's permitted, one's not, how do you distinguish the difference between the two uses? And I guess do we define those? Because if I come to you with a hotel, how do you determine whether it's a boutique hotel or it's a hotel motel?
The hotel motel is not permitted in the DX or the DR or the
right. And my question
DS.
is, so I guess it really comes down to the definition. Do we have a specific definition for hotel motel?
Yes.
That is different from a boutique hotel?
Any other questions?
He hasn't answered my question yet.
Yes, the definition of the hotel is defined as a facility of 30 rooms where overnight accommodations of 15 days or less are provided for compensation. The hotel motel includes accessory uses, full dining, bar, retail, special events, and conference areas. So it's the days controlling of more than 30 for compensation. And that's not included in the downtown districts as a use.
Say that again. It's
A facility with more than 30 rooms where overnight accommodations for 15 days or less are provided for compensation.
couldn't I guess I'm just struggling a little bit with the definitions between boutique hotel and hotel motel and the potential
Can you
conflict there.
assist?
Just because I read the definition, not because I actually know, but the reference between the hotel motel and the boutique is conference center. I don't think at a boutique hotel, the idea would be that there would be a conference facility or necessarily a special event facility. That's the difference in the wording.
At the end, right.
At the end.
Right.
At the end of the definition. That's the difference. Boutique doesn't have conference center and special events, and hotel motel does.
So if I wanted to build a boutique hotel that had a special events room, it would be considered a hotel motel?
I don't think a room would be, like if you had a room in there where you could have a special event, I think it's more of a special event facilities, and perhaps square footage comes into play, because it could be used for a boardroom this morning for a meeting, or it could be used for a dinner this evening. You know, a special events room versus a special events facility where there's multiple rooms involved, more of a common area. It would be up to this council to define that, I think, to your point.
Well, yeah, and I guess I'm trying to help our staff and make sure we have clear definitions, because one is clearly not allowed and one is allowed. So I think we just need to make sure we have a distinction between those two definitions that is measurable. You know, 30 rooms versus 29 rooms, that's pretty obvious. But when you start saying, what's the difference between a special event area or room versus a facility, I mean, who determines what that is? So I'm not arguing this. I actually like what we're doing here. I just want to make sure our definitions are clear.
I think special event facilities are in both. It's the conference center that is not, the conference center part is not in the boutique hotel, but the special events facilities are in both.
Right.
In the suggested wording.
I'm sure staff will take a hard look at this and come up with good definitions before the second reading. No, this is the first reading.
This is first reading.
Is this the first reading?
This is first reading.
All right, Mr. Davidson, would you read the ordinance, please?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 5 and 9 of the Unified Development Code, UDC, to add as a conditional use in the categories DX and DS the use of boutique hotels 31 to 125 rooms. Now therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendment. Amend Article 5, Downtown Historic District, Table 5.5.2, Use Table. Add boutique hotel 31 to 125 rooms, conditional use C in the DX and DS category. In Article 9, use provisions, Section 9.5.6, overnight lodging, add the following, text of which is incorporated herein by reference. Never approved, this will be the first reading.
I'm going to suggest, given the extensive discussion we've had at a late hour tonight, that this also go on the committee agenda for a discussion. Make sure we clean up definitions and whatever else before we get then, and that we don't continue that conversation until 12 o'clock tonight. So do we have a motion?
I have a motion.
Are you thinking of December committee? Or
The
January?
committee before it comes back to this council for a second reading.
Yes, okay.
I'll move for approval of the first reading with the caveat of changing 125 to 100.
Motion to, is that a motion to approve at 100? Motion to approve at 100, is there a second? Fails for lack of a second. Do we have any other motions? Councilmember Diamond,
Move to approve first reading
is that at 125?
as written.
Move to approve the first reading as read by Councilmember Diamond. Is there a second?
Do I hear 112?
Second by Councilmember DePolito. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of 112, raise their hands.
No, 125.
125. Councilmember DePolito.
Do we need to include that we're bringing this back to committee, or that's a separate?
I'm bringing it back to committee. I have placed it on the agenda by fiat here. I've just. Councilmember DePolito, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your hands. DePolito, Diamond, Eigelhart, was that a yes? And Orleans?
First reading, sure.
For first reading, he's voting yes. We'll bring it back to committee at the next available committee meeting.
Next item is approval of initiation of a text amendment to the Unified Development Code, Section 11.6.4, Development Impact Fee Computation. Staff is requesting that the council consider deferral of this item. We are in the process of reviewing the history of this, the most recent analysis related to transportation component, and we would ask that you allow us some more time, please.
Do we have a motion to defer?
Move for approval.
Motion
for deferral, pardon.
Motion to defer by Councilmember Orleans. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DePolito. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of deferral, raise their hands. This is to the 12th, January 12th. Is that what we're deferring it to?
We would like to come back to committee, please,
All right.
in January.
So this is deferring until the second meeting in January or until February?
February.
How about deferred without a date?
Deferred this, right now we're going to defer it until the first meeting.
It will come to the January committee meeting and then to
First
council in
meeting
February.
in February.
Yes, sir.
All in favor of, does anybody have any questions about the date? I don't think we're going to need to take another vote.
Committees.
First meeting in February, it'll come to committee before then. Next item, please.
All in favor?
Oh, did we vote?
No.
All in favor of the motion to defer? Unanimous. Councilmember Orleans, liaison to Public Safety Department, and our Public Safety Department, our loyal and steadfast and ever-present public safety is here.
I would just like to say that while I was impartial, I do want to congratulate the police department winning by default for the eating of the, what do they call it?
Grim Reaper.
Grim Reaper.
They
over
won
at
by
Lucky's.
default. How did that happen?
No, we're not going to discuss that.
One of the firemen couldn't keep it all together. So. While he was very quick and thorough in cleaning off his plate, he didn't exactly hold on until he got home.
Did not finish. DNF.
Oh, he finished. He just gave it back.
Well, that's a DNF. I can tell that did not finish.
Chief Grant, go ahead, please.
This is a contribution agreement between the City of Roswell and the North Fulton Regional Radio System Authority. Essentially, this is an acknowledgement of the transfer of power from the IGA, which was signed back in January of 2013, to the authority, which was went into effect July 1 of 2013. So the financial amount that this agreement mentions was actually approved in the IGA. This was brought before council back on November 24th, and the issue at that time was when the financial contribution amount would be reviewed by the authority. Roswell has an interest in that because we're number one. We pay 32%. The other cities pay less than that. The Board of Managers conferred, and essentially it was agreed that this amount, or the formula that would be used to determine who pays what in future agreements, would be reviewed as part of the budget process with the authority.
Does the council have any questions? Do we have a motion?
Move for approval.
Motion to approve by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Yes, sir, Councilmember DiPolito.
I just wanted to say that I had requested this deferral because I had questions on the document, and I've subsequently had discussions with Caleb, who answered all of my questions, so I'm comfortable with it at this point. Thank you.
All right, let's see the hands for all in favor. All in favor. Next item.
Thank you.
Caleb, that's the Recreation Department. We've already covered that, so we're to the Transportation Department Liaison, Councilmember Nancy Diamond.
Thank you, sir. The next item is approval to amend the City of Roswell Code of Ordinances, Article 22.7, golf carts to permit use of golf carts, personal transportation vehicles, PTVs, on 25-mile-an-hour roads and below, I assume. This would be a second reading. It was deferred from November 24th, and Mr. Clyde Strickland will be here to tell us about it.
This is was presented at committee, and you discussed it last time. Last time you had some questions about Peachtree City. I think we provided you some information about that. We've also added a section that discusses the operation of the personal transportation vehicles and where they may be used within the city, and adds the opportunity that you might want to add a personal transportation vehicle plan. It's an optional element. Other than that, it is as it was before. It provides the enabling legislation so that you can designate 25-mile-an-hour roads, you can designate where they cross, and in school zones, which are the areas that we have identified as the most appropriate for those areas.
When would this become effective if we pass this?
If we pass this, it becomes effective when we actually put up the signs that document that we are a golf cart friendly organization.
So it does not become effective immediately?
No,
There'd be a budget amendment to put up signs, and there'd be discussion of where those signs go?
Correct. There's 7 signs that are required to be located at the city limits where you cross the state highway, which are all of our city limits. And there are 7 signs. When those 7 signs go up, it could become effective at that time.
Does staff believe that we need any regulations to accompany this, or that we need any plan to accompany this?
This is the first step, which is enabled by state law just to do it on 25-mile-an-hour roads. If you go to more advanced roads, 30-mile-an-hour, 35-mile-an-hour, then there are other things you have to do.
I have withdrawn my support for that at this time, and I think Nancy Diamond, I think it's wise to see how it works at 25. So we're not, council, we're not advocating for anything other than 25 at this time.
And we like that as well because it gives us the try one, and really that lets people ask us where they would like to have those connections made, and we like that better anyway. This enables gives you the local authority. It tells you what are the equipment that's required on the golf cart, and it gives you the local authority to establish the conditions as it is right now. And so this is the brief.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Orleans.
Couple questions. One, I think in what we had already passed in the country clubs areas, we had indicated they had to be street ready, which meant turn signals and all that. And then I think the wording was changed in this direction to they must meet the requirements of general law as to registration, inspection, or licensing by the state. Does that still include being street ready for turn signals and brake lights and all that stuff, or how does its definitions compare?
It does. It requires that they have a brake, reverse warning, power switch, headlamps, reflectors, tail lights, horn, rearview mirror, safety warning labels, handholds, or hip restraints.
Okay, and my other question is, section 2276, it says, in the last sentence, it says, delay of other motorized vehicles is not permitted. You want to give us some indication of how we're going to enforce that?
It's kind of like we do when people complain, then you go enforce it. The requirement is that the golf cart has to act like a vehicle, and it has to, if it's using a road that it is shared use, it has to act like a vehicle. That's one of the standards that you're adopting when you adopt the state law. It can't pass, in the lane, it has to take the other lane, they can't race, that's considered in their standards, and they can't drive parallel to each other in a single lane. So the very things that require that they do. You have to act like a
Talk into
vehicle.
the mic. Talk into the mic, please.
You have to act like a vehicle, basically. You have to drive a car like a vehicle. That's
But how are we enforcing delay of other motorized vehicles is not permitted?
same way we do today. If you have a vehicle that's delaying 5 cars, then that's what you'd have to do.
So you have to call 911 and see if a police car can get out there before they disappear and
Exactly.
so forth?
Exactly.
So it's like no purpose in having it in there, really.
But keep in mind that these are only enabled in 25-mile-an-hour streets, so you're not going to see them on the major streets. It's within the subdivisions
I
mostly.
understand, but they can only go 10, 12 miles an hour, so
No, they go about 20.
if you soup them up.
No, I'm just telling you what they average. I followed them before. They do about 18 to 20.
There's 2 different types of golf carts. There's those that are just authorized to work on golf carts and golf courses, and they have 1 speed limit. And those that we're authorizing here are the ones that can go up to 20 miles per hour, 25 miles per hour.
Other questions? Councilmember Diamond.
I just wanted to verify with Mr. Davidson that this was not just 25-mile-an-hour streets. It was up to or 25 mile an hour or less.
Right, they'll be permitted on roads that are 25 miles an hour or less.
Okay, and do we anticipate needing a budget amendment to make those 7 signs?
We're going to look at, no.
Okay, so you don't need
No.
us to make
No.
those. You can go
We've
forth.
already got 2 of them already made, so you know.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember
I do have one more
DiPolito.
question.
One more question by
Yeah.
Councilmember Diamond.
So if I'm driving my car slower than the guy behind me wants me to drive, what's the recourse then?
If you're driving your car and you're delaying more than 3 vehicles, I understand by state law, then you are impeding traffic.
So it's
And they
the
can
same
write you
thing.
up.
Thank you.
I am going to suggest that we publicize this and consistent with Councilman Orland's and let folks have some warning that this is coming so that when they show up, people aren't surprised. And so I'm suggesting that we don't put the signs up immediately and we give people a little warning. Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. A couple of questions. Mr. Strickland, what is the licensing requirement for both the individual and for the golf cart itself?
A golf cart that operates only on the golf course property is not required to be licensed either by state law or by this ordinance. That's basically private property. If you buy a 6-wheel Gator and want to drive it on your farm, there's no requirement for it to be licensed. It's only if it drives on the streets or in the other areas that it would be required to be licensed.
So both the driver and the cart need to be licensed if it's used on the road?
If it's on your road, yes.
Okay. All right, and so does that get licensed with the city, or is that a
Yes,
state license?
No, it has to be licensed by the city if you so choose to do so. If you adopt a personal transportation vehicle plan in it, you require the licensing, then you can register and license those vehicles. And you can charge a $15 fee per every 5 years, and that's in those optional standards that we put in the first section. But if you don't, we're not required to. What you can't do is require it to be licensed by the state.
I suggest we bring this back to committee to discuss licensing and the effect and the date in which we will post these signs. So staff, do not post the signs, and if we pass this tonight until we come to committee and come back to council with a vote.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Councilmember DiPolito.
Hey, it's my turn.
So I was interrupted. Back to licensing for the individual. So you would have to have a state-approved driver's license to drive one of these on the road?
Correct.
Okay. But the cart can be licensed by the city? The
Yes,
vehicle?
correct.
Okay. You had referenced some information from Peachtree City. I did not see that. Was that included somewhere in our information?
I think we may have emailed it to you. Basically, what they just have is a is a brochure which lays out, which we would probably do. I think it's a good idea. Basically, it's just when you get your license, they hand you this, and these are the standards. What it does is reflect that Peachtree City has been at this for 55 years. We would just be starting, and our whole approach is different from Peachtree City's. They're covering the kitchen sink of different things that a person might want to drive on their cart paths, and their cart paths are very different from ours. So they have standards on everything from personal vehicles, electrical, a lady in a wheelchair, everything. They enable all sorts of things, and they have different standards for all of them. But they request that people have golf cart insurance. They list all the different ways that they can do it: pets, paths, courtesy, violations, no racing, no loitering. Pedestrians should be given the right-of-way, audible warnings. It's just basically a guide to how you operate a golf cart in a friendly sort of manner. And that's basically what all the state really wants the plan and the guide to be, is a guide.
Okay, so those are not necessarily laws, they're more rules of the road, friendly courtesy kind of things. Okay. So are we gonna adopt a lot of these same thoughts with our program?
I would suggest that this council consider that.
Okay. And
the program that we're proposing enables you to do that, and that's all. You have to choose to do it.
okay. I guess lastly then, how does the Peachtree City ordinance differ from the ordinance that we're proposing? Or is it-
Peachtree City's ordinance is basically grandfathered even under state law because they adopted it before January 2012. Since they've been at it since 1959, they allow people that are not licensed, 14-year-olds, to drive golf carts because they always have. For example, they still require a license for adults, and a learner's permit's still applicable, but they enable 14-year-olds initially to drive. But other than that, it's pretty much the same.
Okay, so.
Because this is actually modeled after Peachtree City's ordinance, except for that exemption.
So would it be fair to say that our ordinance is more stringent than the Peachtree City ordinance?
Yes, because the state law doesn't allow us to do it because we didn't adopt it before.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilman Orleans.
I guess I thought the licensing here meant that they had to have a regular state vehicle tag.
No.
So they don't have to have anything from state.
No, in fact, the law prohibits us from doing that. The law prohibits us from requiring the state to license golf carts.
So we're going to develop our own license plate, so to speak, and fees and everything.
It's kind of like a sign permit. You just have a little stick-on thing you stick on the golf cart.
Well, I think it needs to be a little more visible and permanent than what that sounds like, I guess.
Peachtree City's golf cart sign is actually a little sticker that you stick on their golf carts about that big.
But
And
but we're being more restrictive than Peachtree City anyway, so.
right. Yeah, but Roswell are.
And ours are going to be out in the streets, not necessarily cart paths like they do, so I'm just thinking ahead that we need to have a license that's big enough to see and will stick on for more than a day or two.
Let me ask staff a question. I'm going to suggest to this council that we pass this with a delayed effective date, and that we give ourselves time to look at licensing and a plan. What does staff would be a reasonable time for us to come together with that? Yes.
I don't know that from the planning standpoint, staff has contemplated whether the council would require a licensing fee or sticker. There's a variety of ways that you can accomplish that. So we could get it done very quickly. I would think we would need at least 60 days to educate people, to help them understand what their requirements are. I don't know how many might be coming in. We currently don't register or don't license those who operate in these golf course communities. That's not something we do currently, and they're out on that street. So a decision needs to be made, and we can certainly bring it back to committee, but I would say at least we would need 60 days to
Well,
get. things together, because you'll have to determine if you're gonna require it or not. You don't have to require a licensing fee.
Being a three-wheeler, I can tell you that this is not three-wheeler season or golf cart season. So perhaps if we could try to get this, the delayed effective date until March 1st, we would have time to put it all together. Because January and February are not big golf cart months. So I would suggest to council we make this effective within the delayed effective date. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Davidson, would you read the ordinance?
Thank you. This is an ordinance to amend the Code of Ordinances of the City of Roswell, Chapter 22, to amend existing Section 22.7.2 and 22.7.6 to allow operation of personal transportation vehicles, motorized carts, as defined by OCGA Section 40-1-1 upon the public roads of the City of Roswell, having a speed limit of 25 miles per hour or less, and to allow the use of personal transportation vehicles, motorized carts, as defined by OCGA 40-1-1 upon designated multi-use paths. Now therefore, to accomplish the foregoing, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following amendments to its ordinance regarding regulation of golf carts, text of which is incorporated herein by reference, and if approved, this will be the second reading.
Do we have a motion? Yes, sir. We're going to hear from the public in a minute, but if we get a motion in a second. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve second reading with an effective date of March 1st, 2015.
Is there a second? Motion by Councilmember Diamond, second by Councilmember DePolito. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Come forward, sir.
Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for your time. I won't keep you too long. My name is Jeff Jablonski. I'm on the Willow Springs. I'm a Willow Springs resident and HOA board member. I'm currently one of the few Roswell residents who is fortunate enough to live in a neighborhood where golf carts are currently permitted. While Willow Springs would lose a nice marketing differentiator if golf carts were open to all Roswell neighborhoods, we feel amending this ordinance will set the foundation for further golf cart expansion, something I believe I can safely say all golf cart owners in Willow Springs would like. So the way I see it, it comes down to this. Most of the residents of our city have little or no option but to drive a car to complete their daily errands. So we can continue to complain about traffic congestion, speeding cars in our neighborhoods, texting drivers, high automobile ownership costs, or we can allow for some options. Options that can help to alleviate congestion, reduce pollution, reduce average vehicle speeds, help to put a few extra dollars in our pockets, and provide a more family-friendly mode of transportation. Lastly, 4 out of 5 millennials say they want to live in a place where they have a variety of transportation options to get to jobs, schools, or meet their daily needs. And 3 in 4 say they're likely to choose to live where they don't need a car to get around. With proper planning, infrastructure design, public education, regulation, and enforcement, communities can safely accommodate golf carts and improve the quality of life for residents of all ages. Therefore, I'd like to ask the city to approve this ordinance change. And lastly, I've read the Peachtree City amendment. Actually, the AARP, believe it or not, has a great article, a 35-page document, probably meant for city leaders, titled Policy Design Considerations for Accommodating Low-Speed Vehicles and Golf Carts in Community Transportation Networks. It's a great read. So, and then regarding the fee, Peachtree City, a lot of friends that live down there, their stickers are essentially, it's not a license, it's a fee to go to expanding the paths and maintaining them. Right now, I don't think we have the trail network for this setup, so I'm not quite sure what the licensing would do or registration. But I would love to see a sticker program set up where we could generate some funds and expand the trail network. So thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. And does anyone else wish to comment? Yes, sir, come forward. And I want to thank the folks who stuck around for this reading of this ordinance. This is late.
I'm Sam Shantos, 1520 Oakwood Drive, Roswell. I'm speaking on behalf of Bike Roswell as well as Roswell Next, which are 2 organizations based here in Roswell. Both organizations are proponents of this. Similar to what this young man just said earlier, I see this as a way not just to have golf carts, but this is more of a connectivity type of option for our city. As a younger citizen of Roswell, many people in Roswell are looking for alternatives. I'm a cyclist, and so that's the mode of transportation that I tend to prefer. But again, on behalf of those two organizations, we'd like to say that we would like for you to move forward in passing this.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak? We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. I want to thank council for supporting this. I want to thank staff for all the work that you're going to have to do to put this into effect. I particularly want to hear from our public safety department. You know, one of the reasons I can see a reason for a sticker is at least we can identify the folks who are delaying traffic, and so I'm not looking for a revenue system as much as an identification and a governance system. I think it's very positive. I did speak with Steve Brown, who was the former mayor of Peachtree City and the current chairman of Forsyth County. Their law allows not only, Forsyth County also allows folks at 25 throughout the county. And he has said that really he has nothing but positive things to say about how golf carts have influenced Peachtree City and Fayette County, and I think I'm confident it will be a positive influence in Roswell. I'm sure there will be some adjustments that will need to be made, but just as bicycles have helped connectivity and created a different culture in Roswell, I think we'll see the same thing with golf carts. The biggest difference is I think golf carts were going to be, the council may have received it. I received a letter from a person with a disability. And he talked about how this gave him freedom to get around town that he didn't have in the car. So it's for some of us, it's a convenience. For others, it will be lifestyle, but it will make Roswell a better place to live in the long run. So I want to thank everyone who supported this and everyone who will be working on this project. But I want to hear in particular from public safety, because my biggest concern is that we don't lose our, public safety is always our first concern, and we want to make sure that y'all take a hard look at this. And again, thank everyone for making this happen. What's next?
Next item is approval of an intergovernmental agreement, IGA, with Cobb County, Fulton County, and the City of Roswell regarding the Willio Road Bridge Replacement Project. And Deputy Director of Transportation, Mohammed Rauf, is here, as well as Rob Del Ross to tell us.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I'll just invite Rob Del Ross to present, and I just want to take a quick moment to announce that Rob Del Ross has been promoted to the Engineering Design Manager's position effective January 1, and he's replacing Franco DeMarco, who is retiring by the end of this year. So congratulations, Rob.
Thank you, Mohammed. This IGA is for a bridge replacement project, a partnership with the City of Roswell, Cobb County, and Fulton County. The existing bridge on Willio Road you see in green is very narrow and has no bicycle pedestrian facilities. This area here in dashed line was recently constructed by Cobb County. There's a brand new roundabout there with a sidewalk and trail system that we would like to extend over this bridge and eventually tie into the river walk system we have along Azalea Drive. We envision a brand new bridge with a sidewalk on this side and a multi-use trail on this side.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember Ippolito.
Thank you. A couple of questions. Under the financial impact section, it mentions that there's $1,936,440 scheduled in our CIP. Is that in our current CIP that's scheduled?
I believe it's a 5-year CIP, so yes, that was part.
Okay, but if this agreement goes through, the city's portion would be half of that, essentially.
Correct.
All right.
We envision splitting the construction costs, whatever that ends up being, 50-50 with Cobb. Based on our estimate at this time, that leaves a Roswell share in the neighborhood of $800,000 for construction.
During committee, I remember discussing paying for the design. I don't remember having a conversation about the construction, and maybe I just missed that. Did we talk about construction at committee?
The budget item you passed last year established our share of the design. Once we get to a point several years down the road when we're closer to construction, we would come back to you and ask for those dollars.
Okay, and I am comfortable with that, but that's not the way this is written. This is actually obligating us for construction of the project, which to me is concerning, particularly because we don't have a design yet and because we haven't really had a chance to take a look at this and compare it to our other capital projects. I assume that once we have it designed, if it falls within the parameters that you think it will, then we'll probably be fine. However, I don't know that I'm ready today to commit to the actual construction of it.
Can you show me where you think it obligates the city to that construction?
Yes, section 1.2 project costs. It says Roswell and Cobb shall fund all costs associated with the engineering, utility relocation, right-of-way acquisition, and construction of project.
Let's turn that to Mr. Davidson to say, what is our obligation if we sign this contract? Are we committed to a blank check, or what limitations are on this?
Well, if you go to Exhibit A, the maximum that we'd be required, if you read below the little chart there, it says, funds listed are the maximum contribution excluding only right-of-way acquisitions costs unless additional funding is otherwise agreed upon. If this council hasn't approved the funding, then we're not going to be obligated to it. This is just listing the maximum that we would be responsible for at this time.
Let me see if I got this straight. If we sign this, but later we do not approve the funding, what happens?
The project doesn't happen.
So we're not committing ourselves to funding. We've agreed to this, but we can, if a future council decides not to fund this, then Cobb doesn't have an action against us. They can call us deadbeats, but they don't have an action against us. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
Councilmember Ippolito.
Well, I guess I have an additional concern because if you look at section 10.1, it's listed as additional funding, but the first sentence reads, both Roswell and Cobb have allocated and committed funds for the costs associated with the design, implementation, and construction of the project. So that's saying right there that we've committed the funds. So I think the wording of this is pretty specific. In 1.2 it says we shall fund, and then under 10.1 it says we have allocated and committed funds. That's pretty direct to me.
Mr. Davidson, your response.
Again, I think you have committed funds in that the project is in the CIP. You're not obligated to actually fund that. It's that's going to be up to the mayor and council at the time. Mayor and councils pull funding from projects all the time, so the project, Cobb County cannot make the city of Roswell do any kind of project in Roswell. They could do a project on their part of the bridge. Our part of the bridge wouldn't work, so there's really no way they could do anything to us. So.
Okay, well, I guess we can agree to disagree on that. There's, under the middle of section 1.2, there's a parenthetical in there that's in the form of a question. So I guess we need to figure out, is that a question or is that a statement?
That parenthetical should have been deleted.
Okay, so the whole thing is taken out?
Correct.
Okay. And then lastly, under engineering, it says that the responsibility of the engineering phase lies with Cobb, which I think is fine, but it says with decisions made and directions to the design engineer given by Cobb, and only Roswell gets to participate in material decisions. But since this is 100% on in our city, I would think we want to say in what that design looks like.
Cobb staff sees this project very similar to us, and that it's a 50-50 partnership. The sentence stating decisions made and directions to the design engineer given by Cobb, that's important to specify in order to establish the point of contact for the consultant being managed by one government versus the other.
I agree with that. What I have an issue with is that we only have the opportunity to speak to the design on material issues. I think we want, like, as you said, it's a 50-50 project. We should get 50% of the vote on how it's designed. I think that's reasonable. And that may have been the intent. It's just not written that way. Similar to the fact that the intent was not for us to obligate ourselves to the construction, but we are. So I think both those things are incorrect.
I can tell you that's definitely the intent. I'll defer to the city attorney on how we want to revise that one sentence. I don't believe that would be an issue for Cobb County or Fulton County.
Okay, thank you.
One other question. Any anticipation of when this project might be ready to let to construction?
Approximately 2 years from the start of engineering.
Assuming National Park Service and ARC and all the other people who held us up for 10 years on the boardwalk find it's not a problem.
We have already spoken with National Park Service about this project. They have given us their boundary line, and if we don't cross that line, we don't need to coordinate with National Park on this project.
That's good to know. How about the archaeological study that we're having to do on the bridge? So the point I'm trying to make with council is it's important that we move forward on this project while we have Cobb County's cooperation, because it's part of our Riverwalk system, but on the other hand, I think it's going to be more of a long range than a short range project, given our experience with projects along the river. They don't seem to go smoothly when it comes to permitting. I hope we can get it done in 2 years, but I'm anticipating 3 or 4 myself, given our past experience.
I understand.
Councilmember Diamond.
Yes, sir. I do appreciate Councilmember DiPolito's concerns about the committed funds. I believe when the minutes, if we review the minutes, there was conversation in that time about, are we going to commit to funding design if we're not committed to doing the project? And I think you'll find in the minutes of that approval that we basically did commit to this. Now, what timeline I don't think is specified in this or in any of ours, because I think they're on a longer timeline probably even than we are.
There is no timeline associated with construction within the IGA. The reason why this project is moving forward is one of the big reasons this project is moving forward is because Cobb recently passed their SPLOST, which established their half of the construction dollars. So those funds are going to be waiting for us when we get to construction.
Other questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember Diamond to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember DiPolito.
I would like to propose an amendment to the document under Section 1.3 engineering, that the design decisions will be between Roswell and Cobb, and that any material decisions affecting Cobb require Cobb's approval, and well, I guess we really wouldn't need that. Let me back up. I'd like to amend the document to say that design decisions will be made by both Cobb and Roswell.
Motion to amend the intergovernmental agreement to require design decisions to be made jointly by Cobb and Roswell. Is there a second?
I have a question.
Question by Councilmember Diamond.
So, Mr. Davidson, how does that square with, I mean, I think the point of this was Cobb was taking the lead because they're the bigger entity that can wade through some of this more efficiently than we can. How does that affect that?
Well, from a practical perspective, I'd ask our transportation department.
That will affect the project very little. We, as staff, have a good relationship with the director and the deputy director and the PMs at Cobb, that regardless of how we word that second sentence of 1.3, I'm assured they would have done that anyway.
Okay, then I'll accept the amendment.
All right. We have a motion and a second to accept the agreement with the change suggested by Councilmember DiPolito. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your hands. That's unanimous.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, I did not vote for it.
Pardon, I didn't hear you.
I did not vote for it.
Oh,
I still am uncomfortable with the wording in the document, so I'm supportive of the design of the project.
supportive of the amendment, but didn't support, I got you. So it's, Councilman DiPolito is opposed. That passes 3-1.
There's really no amendment and no vote on the amendment. It was strictly accepted by Nancy as the motion maker, and no, I wasn't.
Let's start over again, because I think there's a debate about what was voted on. And if there's a debate about voted on, rather than me deciding what it is, let's start over again. Councilmember Diamond, we're going to start from scratch. Do you have a motion?
I have a motion to approve the IGA with Cobb County, but I'm gonna have to ask Mr. DiPolito to repeat his 1.3 adaptation.
Yes, my suggestion was that under section 1.3, that design decisions are made mutually between Cobb and Roswell.
Is that your motion? Is there a second to that motion? Second by Councilmember Eigelhart. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? That is the motion to approve the IGA with the amendment suggested by Councilmember DiPolito. Councilmember Eigelhart's in favor. Councilmember Diamond is in favor. And Councilmember Orleans is in favor. That's 3 in favor, all opposed. Councilmember DiPolito is opposed. Passes 3-1. So we have a city attorney's recommendation for closure. I hope it will be short. Do we have a motion for closure? Motion by Councilmember Eigelhart, second by Councilmember Orleans. I can see him pour his glass in favor. All in favor, stand up. That's approved.